Tuesday morning, welcome to the AM News here on the AM Show. My name is Pakwesi Shandof. So our very first story, road tolls are back. Yes, they are, but on selected highways, government says it is reintroducing this revenue measure as part of a public-private partnership arrangement to finance its road projects. The finance minister, during the presentation of the 2022 budget in November 2021, announced the abolition of road tolls with immediate effect. The minority in Parliament described the fiat as illegal and further argued it will cause financial loss to the state. But the finance minister later in March told the House no financial loss has been caused as a result of the cancellation of road tolls. Well, Monday, Kenoforiata announced a U-turn. Here is how.
The Ministry of Roads and Highways is currently under review by GIF, Ministry of Roads and Highways, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Ministry of Finance. When completed, the concession agreement is expected to be approved by the PPP Committee, Cabinet, and Parliament. The completed road will be tolled. Mr. Speaker, all new roads of this nature will be tolled.
The finance minister said the development of the rail sector remains a major part of government's development agenda. Last week, government revived passenger train service on the Accra-Tama line. Kenoforiata noted that other major lines under development will be completed within schedule.
Investments continue to be made by government towards the development of a modern railway network. We believe in this because we know that creating an alternative means of transport, especially for goods, will ease the pressures on our roads and future impacts of global crude price hikes on farm products. For example, government is within target to complete the construction of the new Tema-Mpakadan rail line by the end of this year. The project is currently about 92% complete. The operationalization of the project is expected to enhance efficiency at the Tema port and provide the shortest possible transportation route between the southern and northern parts of Ghana.
Meanwhile, the minority in Parliament is accusing government of monetary financing. Addressing the media in Parliament after the media budget review presentation, ranking member on the Finance Committee, Kesel Atuforsen, said the Bank of Ghana has printed 22 billion cedis to support government expenditure without parliamentary approval, a move that could have dire consequences on the economy, he said.
It will surprise you to note that when the minister spoke in his statement, he failed to inform all of us that something significant has happened at the Bank of Ghana. I just had a copy of the document itself, only to realize that between January 2022, and June 2022, the minister responsible for finance and the government has gone to the Bank of Ghana and they have encouraged the Bank of Ghana to print money worth 22 billion Ghana cedis. They have printed 22 billion Ghana cedis fresh money without the knowledge of Parliament. Colleagues, I am saddened. No wonder inflation is galloping. No wonder that our reserves position is dwindling. Because when you create a new money out of the thin air, what happens is that inflation will go up. And obviously, again, because it's a new money, you will end up losing your reserves because there will be new consumption. I am surprised that in the minister's statement, he failed to alert all of us that he has encouraged the Bank of Ghana to print new money worth 22 billion Ghana cedis. only for us to see it in this document. And you can see it in the media review document, page 97, appendix 2A. And the Bank of Ghana, they have printed 22 billion and 48 million Ghana cedis. 22 billion and 48 million Ghana cedis, new money that they have printed, without approval of Parliament.
Now away from Parliament, Director of Kumasi Zoo, Dr. Paul Meya Zeka, has allayed fears that food bats found in Accra and Kumasi may be carrying the Marburg virus. He says the indigenous species, also known as the common fruit bat, do not carry the disease. Speaking with Love News, he however warns of getting exposed to them as they may carry other deadly viruses.
Yes, they pose a certain level of threat. But if you are referring to the current reported outbreak of Marburg virus disease that has been reported by Ghana Health Service, actually it is not this type of bats that you see here in this environment that is supposed to be carrying or to be the suspected host. It is actually what we call the Rosetus Egypticus. That's commonly called the Rosetus or the Egyptian fruit bats. And these bats are actually commonly found in caves, abandoned mine sites, holes in tree trunks, basically. So the bat that is suspected to be carrying that virus, that is where they are actually found, and not these ones that are roosting in these trees here. So, and when we talk of abandoned mining holes, when we talk of caves, definitely you could see there's some level of risk there. But we have tourists who visit caves to see other things. We have traditional people who go to worship in caves. We also know that in Ghana we've had challenges with illegal mining, and I know, of course, there should be some abandoned holes in those mining sites. So some of these bats could also go to roost in some of these caves, and when people have access to them, then the risk of acquiring the virus is there. In 2012, the Forestry Commission Wildlife Division collaborated with the University of Ghana, University of Cambridge, and other international research organizations. Some research was done in some caves at Boeim, and actually antibodies of the Marburg virus disease were found in those caves. The virus has not been isolated, but antibodies were found. Yeah, so having said that about the Egyptian fruit bats, we know that all bats in general, whether insectivorous bats, that is those bats that eat insects, and the other bats that eat fruits, could be carriers of thousands or hundreds of pathogens that could be detrimental to our health. So we all have to make sure we protect ourselves, stay away from bats, especially those who consume bat as bushmeat, and then protect our environments and make sure that when you get up in your yard where you have fruit trees and you see that fruit has fallen on the ground and is half eaten, basically these fruits are eaten by bats and then it falls over on the ground. Sometimes that's where children go to pick them to also eat, maybe without washing. So we have to take the necessary precautions and actions to prevent the spillover from the disease from either any of these bats into humans.
Chief Justice Kwesi Ininyiboa is calling for the adoption of alternative dispute resolution as a preferred choice in resolving cases. He says the country cannot afford to postpone the total adoption of ADR when it is providing absolute and early resolution of cases to many who use the traditional courts. Speaking at the launch of this year's ADR week in Kumasi, Justice Ininyiboa urged lawyers to enhance their capacities in alternative dispute resolution.
Alternative dispute resolution was instituted in 2005 as an intervention to ease pressure on the regular court system. The ADR Act, Act 789 of 2010, which established ADR, makes it imperative for its adoption regardless of the court, including Ghana's apex court, the Supreme Court.
The Ghana Bar Association Ashanti region, we support it because it is faster, it is cheaper, and it reconciles members who are in conflict.
According to Chief Justice Ininyiboa, ADR, since its introduction, has absolutely resolved 29,558 cases in the last 15 years. He wants all, especially disputants and their lawyers, and the general public to embrace it. He wants the bar, a major stakeholder of the judiciary system, to help entrench alternative dispute resolution in the courts.
Over the last 1.5 decades, the ADR program has, to a large extent, performed impressively by helping the judiciary to reduce the load on the courts by 29,558 cases. This is a positive support ADR has offered to the judiciary, without which this load would have been borne by the courts under more stressful conditions. The good news is that this number of cases resolved at ADR are resolved absolutely, without resorting to appeals, which also creates another backlog. I take this opportunity to urge the members of the bar, as the major stakeholder of the judiciary, to cooperate with us as we entrench ADR in our adjudication process. My lords, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Sections 72 and 73 of the Courts Act 1993 at 459, CI 133, and the ADR Act, that is Act 789 2010, makes it imperative that ADR should be adopted regardless of the court, whether at the District Court, Circuit Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. They need to work hard in Ghana to make ADR a preferred choice for disputants and their lawyers is now. We cannot afford to postpone it indefinitely.
Meanwhile, Justice Irene Charity Labi, in charge of ADR, has described ADR as a reliable partner to the traditional justice delivery system. She has been explaining how ADR can be accessed in Ghana.
One may ask, how do I access the ADR? A court, at any stage of the proceedings, can refer a matter to the ADR, and any of the parties can also request for ADR during the trial. With the process being optional, the consent of the parties is sought before the matter is referred. The ADR program has been extended to 131 courts across the nation, with at least 5 mediators assigned to each of these courts. A total of 635 mediators have been trained and assigned to the 131 courts connected to the ADR program.
Ohime Interior's report read to you.
Still in the Ashanti region, 2 journalists and a driver of Lava Firm, a subsidiary of the Multimedia Group Limited, have been attacked by purported watchmen of the Sewa Regional Hospital in the region. The media personnel had gone to the Sewa Hospital to file a report on the deplorable nature of the road leading to the hospital. When the attackers assaulted them, they vandalized part of the company's vehicle, including the side mirror, and shattered the rear window glass. However, the journalists and other persons on board the vehicle were unhurt. There's more in this report.
At about 11:30 on Monday, 2 men purported to be security personnel of the Sewa Hospital approached a reporter, photojournalist, and a driver of Lava Firm when they noted they had come to the facility to film. The journalist and his colleagues had gone to film the road linking to the hospital, which had stalled for years now. The men, whose names are yet to be identified, started filming the journalist for a supposed breach of taking shots of the facility and denied them access to seek permission from the authorities. They, as a result, sacked them from the premises. While they evacuated the premises, the watchers violently attacked the media personnel, attempting to smash the passenger window of their vehicle and pelted stones at them. They damaged the driving mirror and shattered the rear window glass. The journalist and other persons on board were, however, unhurt. The case has since been reported to the Feyasi police stations, with preliminary investigations ongoing. For JoyNews, Emmanuel Bright-Kweku reporting.
Meanwhile, authorities and pupils of the Komasa cluster of schools are now heaving a sigh of relief following a donation of 150 dwell decks valued at 22,500 Ghana cedis to the school. Previously, the pupils lie on the dirty bare floor during instructional periods and had their uniforms torn as a result of the continuous rubbing of the uniforms on the floor. JoyNews' Upper West Regional correspondent Rafiq Salam was at the Kumasa in the Sola Tuna Kaba district of the Savannah region and now files this report.
On a normal school day, this is how it looks like at Kulumaha DA Primary and Kindergarten. Here, you see some of the pupils seated on a long bench. Others who have no such facility have to lie on the bare floor. Make no mistake, these primary 2 pupils of Kulumaha DA Primary are not engaged in a competition of who can lie on the dirty cemented floor for long, but painted a mental picture of the inadequate furniture at Kulumaha cluster of schools. In this class, there are 2 sets of pupils, some seated on a 10-meter long rough flower board bench, and the unlucky ones lie prostrate on the dirty bare floor, holding on to their books while teaching went on. The continuous rubbing of their uniforms on the bare floor has resulted in many of them having torn school uniforms and often requires the service of an embroidery machine. The few classes that have furniture that the pupils outnumber are old, jaded, and have crooked stands, and usually have to be supported with another piece of wood to enable them sit comfortable. Teachers and pupils are unhappy with the situation.
We find it difficult to write. In a primary school, my sisters and brothers, they come home every day dirty. When you ask them, they'll say they have been sitting on the floor to write. And even their books are always dirty. Some of them lost their pens because they don't have desks to put their pens and books inside. Even in the junior high school, we the Form 3s, we sit 3-3. And when we are going to write the mark, you see that some people will be copying each other.
Also worried about the unhealthy and dehumanizing situation at the schools is the Kulumaha Youth Association, KYA. The association has to divert monies meant for a water project in the community to fix the furniture challenge.
A few months ago, it was brought to the attention of KYA that the furniture situation in our schools was quite deplorable. In fact, we saw pictures of children laying on their bellies to write, while others sat on the bare floor. We are told that very often some of the children fell asleep while laying down to write. To cut a long story short, it became imperative for KYA to act to bring relief to these children. Mr. Chairman, basic education is as important as secondary education. Hence, a neglect may lead to a collapse of the very foundation of our education. At our annual general meeting held in April this year, the issue of furniture was on the front burner. Indeed, we resolved that we use money meant to undertake a water project to immediately solve the furniture menace in our primary schools.
President of the KYA, Abu-Baidoo, on behalf of members of the association, donated 150 dual decks valued at 22,500 Ghana cedis to the Solatuna Calabar District Directorate of Education for onward distribution to the Kulumaha cluster of schools. Head teacher of Kulumaha DA Primary School, Suba Mamporo, on behalf of Kolike teachers, thanked the association for the kind gesture and promised not only to put them into good use, but takes care of them as well.
One of the most daunting challenges in most Ghanaian basic schools, which is inadequate furniture supply, is sufficiently eradicated today through the great and indefatigable efforts of Kulumaha Youth Association, KYA. The parents, teachers, and students of Kulumaha will forever remain grateful to KYA for making such a humongous donation to enhance education delivery in Kulumaha.
Reporting for JoyNews, Rafiq Salam, Kulumaha, Solatuna Calabar District.
Now to Cape Coast, where the Infantipim School is urging old boys to help shore up the school's feeding needs by supporting the school. This follows the donation of 400 bags of rice, 100 bags of sugar, and some gallons of oil by the Chief Executive Officer of Rigworld, an old boy of the school, to support the school as it battles with shortages of food. Infantipim Headmaster Reverend Ebenezer Adu says the food items received comes as a huge relief to the school, especially to its final years. There's more in this report.
The Infantipim school received 400 bags of rice, 100 bags of sugar, and 30 gallons of oil from the CEO of Rigworld Ghana, Kofi Amoaban, an old student of Infantipim school. Senior high schools have been grappling with food shortages, and the headmaster of Infantipim school says such items received during this difficult period comes as a huge relief. Reverend Ebenezer Adu wants the school's old students to rise up to the call to support the students.
They've come at the right time to supplement what the government is doing for us and other schools all over the place. So I'm happy for this kind gesture and to go a long way to motivate the boys to study well for the exam that is upcoming, knowing that there's food to eat. So old boys, thank you very much for this kind gesture. And to Dr. Kofi Aban, who has made this possible, and to appeal to all those out there that we need more. So if you're hearing me out there, an old boy, please come. I also do your part for the school, the only school.
The Rigworld Group says the gesture is part of their corporate social responsibility and as a way of responding to a national call. Stephen Adakwa represented the group.
It's part of our corporate social responsibility that we embark yearly to senior high schools and non-senior high schools. So it's one of the normal things we normally do to making sure that we feed the country. One of the company, a subsidiary, which is Transatlantic Catering, as part of their end of year budget, something has been made, allocation has been made to be able to fund such projects, and it was one of the things that we have to do. And since the CEO is also a product of the school, we decided that this time around, let's start from Infantipim. And that doesn't mean the other schools will not be able to receive part of this privilege. From here, other schools are also going to receive part of this privilege to make sure that the national call has been attended to.
For the Rigworld Group, it is their fervent belief that caring for Ghana's future generations is everyone's responsibility, and they hope the gesture will evoke an emotional response and encourage a national effort to support the country's youth. Reporting for Joy News, Richard Kwejenya-Akon, Cape Coast.
That's all for the news. My name is Pakwesi Shandof. Do have a pleasant day, and I'll leave you in the company of Benjamin Akakpo and Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. Do stay.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. Time now for the news review. We get into the papers and find out what they have to share with us this morning. And joining us to dilate on them, we have Liz Hayford-Asari, media consultant. Liz, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
You're looking
and
very
how
official.
Are you this morning?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Under the circumstances, I'm well. I thank God for life, for strength, for health. Yesterday was a rather tiring day. I had to stick and stay and deal with the mid-year budget review, on which I have my own myriad thoughts. And then let's just say it was a very long day, but worth it as I had interactions on the mid-year budget review. Did you follow a lot of it?
No, parts of it, yes, but I had work to do. So my mind was based on what I was doing and not on what I was hearing.
So just a summary off the top of my head, the things that come to mind. Newly constructed roads, the Tema motorway extension, for example, will be tolled. So we're going back to the tolling system. I guess finally there's some listening going on as far as government is concerned. But when it comes to our dynamics as a country, so many things are involved. In fact, the minority side, reflecting on what was delivered yesterday, said it was empty and that there was not much to the budget statement that was put out there. But in terms of our GDP growth, for example, So let me just get to that page. The projection was 5.8%. Now it's been revised to 3.7%. Non-oil GDP growth was projected to be 5.9%. It has been slashed down to 4.3%. That's a 1.6 percentage point decrement. Inflation, 8%. That was the projection. Of course, we know where we are now, 29.8%. But according to this chart, 28.5%. The fiscal deficit, 7.4%. Currently 6.6%. And the primary surplus, 0.1%, standing now at 0.4%. And of course, we know in terms of our gross international reserves, we have just about 3 months to contend with in terms of import cover. Other items, maybe in my interactions with some of the economists, apart from the 393 billion Ghana cedis that we owe in terms of our debt stock, we're also looking at 25 billion arrears, in arrears locally. We owe WAEC, we owe contractors, we owe, there's the school feeding program and all of that. So many things to digest. But listening to the finance minister yesterday, what were your key takeaways?
Did I get any? Apart from looking at exports and making sure that we are secure when it comes to grains, that was one. Again, when he spoke about roads, I have experienced some of the roads, so I think that that is another one. But on the whole, I really wasn't expecting something new, because he did say that he was making a statement. He wasn't reviewing the budget. It wasn't a motion that he was putting on the floor of the House. It was a statement. And when you put a statement, there's nothing to debate. The members of parliament can just contribute to the statement that he has made. There's nothing really to debate. There's no monies that they're going to look out so that there's a reappropriation of the Appropriation Act. There's no supplementary budget to look at. So I really wasn't expecting much, and that probably is why I really didn't pay attention. So what we have as a budget is what we're still working with.
Were you impressed, though, by everything? For me, one of my core problems, I don't know why every time we have to deliver a budget, and to you, Ghana, I don't know what you think, but we have to sit on tenterhooks and wait, and 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock becomes so many hours. It threw a spanner in my own, works, because as a presenter, I also had other things to move on and do. And I planned my time around 10 o'clock and scheduled other meetings. Guess what? I had to wait here till after 1 o'clock, close to 2 o'clock, before the budget statement started being read. Some of these, I don't know, they smack of, sometimes these are problems that I feel, because you don't go to other jurisdictions and see this. In other jurisdictions, an MP shows up late in Parliament and resigns, but here, I don't know. I don't know what your take is on that.
That for me is one of the major problems that shifted my attention, because like you, I programmed other things to do. And as the time approached, I can't reschedule, because when you make appointments with people, they are bound to be waiting for you, and you don't keep them waiting. So my question as we were waiting was, so who pays for this time? Because time is money. And if I'm sitting and doing nothing when I have 101 other things to do, who is going to pay for that time? So I got up and started doing what I had to do. And that for me is very worrying. And it's not only yesterday that it happened. I've been to functions where they tell me the function will start at 10. I get there at 10:15, and 10:30, maybe only 2 or 3 people have come. And for me, it's very irritating. And I try hard to say that I will be late, but I can't be late. It's not something that I've grown up with. So I always keep the time. That is something that we lack here in Ghana. We don't keep the time. We are always wasting time, and time is money.
Time indeed is money. Hopefully someday we'll wake up to the fact that it's also part of a draw on our development. But let's get into some details of the budget review. It's been described as not inspiring by the minority. Pictured here in the Daily Graphic on page 13, Dr. Cassie Latoforsen, ranking member of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Let's get into that very quickly. page 13. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Okay, so the mid-year budget review was not candid and truthful to Ghanaians about the economic challenges facing the country, the minority in parliament has said. According to them, the country was in serious economic crisis to the extent that its debt was unsustainable. And mind you, it is important when we talk about unsustainable debt because that will also determine the dynamics, how we play the game with the IMF. We need to bring our debt to sustainable levels. But the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, failed to speak the truth to encourage Ghanaians to buy into the problems confronting the nation. That's according to the minority. According to him, I am disappointed in the statement by the minister. I think if the country is in crisis to the extent that your debt is unsustainable, then when you appear before Parliament, first you have to speak the truth to get the public buy-in, he said. Now, addressing the press shortly after Mr. Ofori-Atta had presented the mid-year budget review to Parliament yesterday, Dr. Forson, flanked by some members of his caucus, said, everything is not working. Yet the minister responsible for finance appeared before us and said nothing. He failed to address the very concerns of ordinary Ghanaians. They go on to talk about mounting debt, fiscal deficit, the GDP growth, printing of currency. And I want to end on the printing of currency because it's a point that Isaac Adongo also made. Dr. Forson accused the government of encouraging the Bank of Ghana to print currency totaling 22 billion Ghana cedis without parliamentary approval. In fact, he also adds, if you listen to him, 48 million Ghana cedis. According to him, the currency notes were printed between January and June 2022. And some details I noted down. According to Isaac Adongo, things to note. The Central Bank Act, stipulates that the central bank cannot loan more than 5% of the previous year's revenue to government. That's the first point. And secondly, even when that is going to be done, a printing of money to shore up, the economy, because that also has its ripple effect on the economy, new spending, and that can also lead to different measures, inflation and all. It must receive parliamentary approval, but that was not done. And Isaac Adongo at a point made mention of the fact that, and I see one of the papers capturing it, that Ken Ofori-Atta could be digging his own grave into prison. Your quick thoughts on this?
Digging his own grave into
prison in future.
I hope not. But my quick take, I don't think that I really have considered all those things. But when you have the act that states exactly what should be done, then I think it behoves on the Bank of Ghana, even when you're being given directives that is outside the act, because your answer to the act and the Constitution. If you're doing things that are contrary to what your mandate is, then you must be questioning yourself as either the governor or the bank or whatever to what you are getting yourself into. And so, like you said, printing money, it has rippling effects on our economy. Our debt insustainability is something that we really need to look at. We have not, and like Dr. Forson said, the minister did not speak to how we were going to sustain ourselves or get ourselves out of the debts that we have dug ourselves into. And so that, again, is a worrying factor for me, because if your economy should rebound, then you should be able to take steps to make sure that you're not sinking deeper in debt and that you're being able to be more efficient and more prudent in your spending.
Well, he did say, Liz, that they were going to stick to the appropriations for 2022, and so they weren't going to spend more. But of course, when you look at the reprinting of money, the 22 billion involved, then it means that maybe on paper we're not spending, but eventually we're going to spend.
Yes, indirectly we are spending. If you're looking at the appropriation, and if you're looking at the appropriation of what was presented in November, then we are not supposed to spend any more money. We are only supposed to be able to plug loopholes and collect the revenues so that we can sustain ourselves. And in sustaining ourselves, pay the debts that we owe. But if we are not able to keep that, because the percentages, I think, for debt sustainability came down, if we are not able to do that, then we are still in the rut. And so it will take us a longer time to get out of where we are. We're still going to be struggling. We're still going to be in a crisis situation. And so what are the steps that we're taking to get us out of the crisis that we are in currently? I didn't hear anything towards that. And that probably is why Dr. Forson said that it was empty and things fall apart.
Well, for me, two things, just to wrap on the economy, two things that I was looking forward to that I didn't see. Our savings. And when I talk about savings, so we've slashed salaries, executive salaries by 30%. How much has been accrued from there? We have cut down, fuel disbursement to certain categories of people by 50%. How much has been accrued from there? We have cut down on the travel of some members of the executive and government, business by extension. How much has been accrued from that? People were waiting to see those so that we'll be able to quantify and say that, look, this is how much we are saving as a country. And this is what, this means to us in terms of tightening our belts and all of that. That did not have it happen. And that was disappointing, not just for me, but for other economists and the tax people and others who are watching us. The other bit has to do with the e-levy. Crucial. As of now, we're expecting to see what the impact has been of the e-levy. How much have we got secured from it? And it's even more of a concern because there had been a report, earlier that hinted at the fact that what we were accruing from the e-levy was just a pittance, a drop in the bucket compared to what we were expecting. Then Gabi Otredak also posted something about raking in 10%, for which reason likely we would go to the IMF and all of that. If those turn out to be true, then I feel the finance minister did for us a very great disservice by not letting us know what the picture is. The president of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obeng, was mentioning yesterday that maybe we should slash it to 0.5%. All of these play into what people should know and the decisions moving forward. Whether conveniently or otherwise, the finance minister disregarded these 2 points, our savings and the e-levy. Your quick thoughts on that?
And my concern with that is, does the finance minister himself know what we are getting from the e-levy?
He ought to know. I mean, the GRA people have been on our shows, but they don't have the permission to put it out. So the central bank, in consonance with the finance minister, are those who can put it out. Not some ordinary person working at the GRA. So he was expected to do that.
Yes, and he ought to know, but have they done their homework well? There's a lot of inefficiencies in the system. So then you ask questions. Instead of putting out something and coming back to change it, get it properly done. So he owes us an explanation as to why there was nothing said on the e-levy, because that is an area that everybody thought, or we were made to think that it would help us recover from all the crises and menaces that we were experiencing and going through. So if nothing was said on that, everybody will question, because if you put e-levy, at least give us a review of how e-levy is doing. And if nothing of that is said, then that's why I'll question if he has anything to say on it, that if he didn't say it, then he probably hasn't done his homework well. So if he had done his homework well, he probably would have spoken to it.
Well, let's get some other stories in the coup plotters trial. Court orders suspects to open defense. That story as well on page 13. Then there's Bank of Ghana maintains policy rate at 19%. Story on pages 16 and 17. Just a very quick look at that. And the Bank of Ghana has maintained its policy rate at 19%. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana, of course, for the first time since November last year, maintained the policy rate at 19%. The governor and the Bank of Ghana and chairman of the MPC, Dr. Ernest Addison, who announced the decision on the policy rate at a press conference in Accra yesterday, said the committee arrived at the decision due to current inflationary trends, which rate of increase had begun to see a deceleration. But just a quick look at the number crunch. 200 billion. What does that refer to? Total assets of banks grew by 22.8% on a year-on-year basis to 200 billion at the end of last month. Media budget review, government vows quicker turnaround. Completed Accra Tema motorway extensions to be tolled, so you will be paying tolls soon. Macroeconomic targets revised downwards. And we can also make mention of the fact that he said while it wouldn't be, easy, the turnaround of the economy, he is hoping that within 2.5 years, which some economists have said is too optimistic, but I mean, a step in the right direction anyway, to turn around the economy. Only time will tell what happens in that respect. Finally, with the Daily Graphic, over 1,800 fleet terrorist attacks in Burkina Faso to Ghana. The concern that has been raised about this has to do with the fact that for all those genuine people who may be fleeing attacks in neighboring countries, there could be terrorists in there. People from terrorist cells, networks who could infiltrate, and experts have said, analysts have said that security forces don't have the real capacity to sift through and pick out terrorist elements, which could mean that as we accommodate these refugees, we could also be attracting terrorists. Your final take on that?
And that is very worrying and it's scary, but we don't have the ability to, and because of a few people, we can't turn thousands away. But again, we need to be able to, when they come in, monitor them and make sure that we keep them in enclosed spaces. What we do normally is when refugees come in, after a while, when they've gone through all the medical checks and things like that, they are able to walk around freely in our country. If we are going to be able to tell whether we have terrorists amongst them or not, then we need to keep them in enclosed spaces. And in those spaces, we need to have high security so that we don't have them misbehaving, we don't have them infiltrating our communities. We don't have them mixing up with our people, so that you have those people in that space, then you'd be able to monitor and keep them and see how they behave. But if we leave them to freely walk in our country like we always do, then it's a security threat to all of us. And definitely, we would definitely have people coming in, because if they're causing it in Burkina Faso and the people are coming in and they come with them, how are we going to tell? And that is, for me, is worrying. But then there should be security high alert in those border areas so that our security would know that these are some of the things that they would have to be dealing with.
Let's contemplate some other stories now.
I was going to talk about the roads and the tolling.
Well, quickly on that.
When the tolls were removed, some of us were asking questions, because if we were tolling a road and you've stopped tolling it, then the road should be still be in very good condition. But we toll roads that are not anything to write home about. Having traveled recently, Eastern Volta, Oti regions, I would say that some of the roads are very good. I was surprised that I traveled from Ho to Dambai on very good road. But then from Pando,
did you use the Sokode route?
Yes.
Okay.
But coming back, we used Pando to Esikuma, and that is a terrible road. And I hear that for most people who are coming from the Oti region to Accra, that is the route they use. But that is a terrible road. From Koforidia to Somenya, there is a road that you can use, but that again is a terrible road. So some of the roads are good, but some of the roads are so terrible that by the time you finish your journey, your body itself is complaining. So yes, some work has been done, but I think more needs to be done. And if we really want to get on with our roads and make sure that our roads are proper, the best thing to do is toll the roads. But when we toll the roads, let's use the money to maintain the roads and to make sure that other roads are constructed. You don't know what the road tolls, the money collected from road tolls are used for. And yet you're always paying tolls. And some people are thinking that because it was given to private hands had their own way of taking their own money. They won't give you the proper receipts when you pay for a toll, all kinds of things. We need to do our things and do our things properly. These are some of the inefficiencies in the system that we must be looking at.
The Ghanaian Times newspaper, major issues we've already looked at, but I'll just walk you through the headlines. Finance Minister says in 2022 budget review, economy to rebound in 2.5 years. And government lays foundation for National Growth Enhanced Development Program to be basis for negotiating with the IMF. Free SHS TVET programs not under review. Interesting, because we heard from, is it the Director General of the Ghana Education Service, smacking of, parents are going to have to pay something. And my interactions with a lot of economists, they say, look, we have to take a look at it, because while it may not be the most expensive of government's flagship programs, it's also a drain that we ought to look at and see how we can bring in other aspects to cushion the economy. Because guess what? What's the economy? It's not just what government is handling. In the end, it is us. And we are all involved. And if it goes bust, we suffer along with it. There's also budget review.
I think that it's important for us to always review our policy programs, especially when you know that when you implement a policy, you have some teething problems. So you have to review to be able to make sure that those teething problems are eradicated and that you are being more efficient in the way you're rolling out your policy. You're not just rolling out your policy because you want it rolled out. It's because you want the students educated. It's because you want a brighter future for the children of Ghana. So if you're not getting that in the end, then the question should be, why are we not getting what we hope to get? And so if you're not reviewing, then what is it? It's not only about the money, it's about the quality of education that we are getting. It's not just about children in school, it's about the products that we are getting when they've come through school.
Then there's budget review will not offer respite for economic hardship, minority insists. In other stories, WHO declares monkeypox outbreak a global public health emergency, and Ghana has recorded some 34 cases as of the last time we heard from Dr. Patrick Kumawwaje, who is Director General of the Ghana Health Service. But two quick stories I want to run by you, and then we'll say bye-bye to the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Policeman granted 100,000 Ghana cedi bail for impersonating IGP and CID boss. So a policeman who allegedly impersonated the Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Ekufu-Dampare, and Director General of the CID, Commissioner of Police, Ken Yeboah, has been granted 100,000 Ghana cedi bail by the Circuit Court in Accra. General Corporal Akono Opoku, who was charged on 2 counts of attempting to commit crime and defrauding by false pretense, pleaded not guilty. The court, presided over by Mrs. Adelaide Abui Kede, ordered him to produce 2 sureties. Now, the court ordered prosecution to file and serve all disclosures and witness statements within 31 days. But just to sum it up, the prosecution said, on October 11, 2021, the complainant petitioned the Director General of CID to investigate and arrest Nalia for stealing $40,000 from his room on August 18, 2021. Chief Inspector Amwa said on August 19, the complainant received text messages and phone calls on his Vodafone and MTN contact numbers from an unknown Airtel Tigo number, and the persons posed as the IGP and the Director General of the CID. That's the first story. Second one, Ghanaian killed in suspected terrorist attack in Burkina Faso. A Ghanaian was among 2 civilians who were killed in recent suspected insurgency in neighboring Burkina Faso last week. The Ghanaian, a citizen of the Binduri district in the Upper East region, only identified as Akama, has left behind 3 wives and 13 children. The family of the late Akama were among 1,183 Burkinabes who fled Burkina Faso in the wake of the terrorist attack to seek refuge in Ghana. Quick reactions to these 2 stories?
With the first story, I don't know if I'm going to react, because my question is, he's been granted bail. It doesn't mean that the case is over. So if the case is still in court, then I don't want to be caught prejudicing whatever the outcome will be. So I would hold my thoughts on that one. If he's been granted bail, it's in the court's purview to do so. So I don't have much to say about that, unless the case has been completed and whether he's been interdicted, removed, jailed, whatever. So let me put a hold on that one. With the Ghanaian killed, we know that between Ghana and Burkina Faso, even the border, we do a lot of business on the borders. I don't know whether Ankama went there to work or whether he went there to trade, whatever he went there to do. It's unfortunate he was caught in this terrorist attack. But then again, it raises concerns for us because this is just a border town that we are talking about. I'm sure there are more Ghanaians in Burkina Faso and there are a lot of Burkinabes in Ghana because it's just the border. And sometimes it's just the same people who a border has been put there by some foreigners and therefore we are split into different countries. So again, security has to be on high alert, especially in our border regions to the north. And we need to be careful. And therefore, I think that Ghanaians also have to be advised to be circumspect in when they're traveling outside and where they're going and what they're doing, especially if it's on the border between Ghana and Burkina Faso, Ghana, Togo, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire. We know that there have been terrorist attacks in some of these areas, so we need to be careful and we need to get our people to be security conscious in their movements and in their dealings.
Let's take a look at some stories to wrap up the conversation this morning, Liz. So I'm going to put them all together and then you can react to them. I'll start with the Daily Guide newspaper. The headlines: road tolls return, coup plotters ordered to open defense. But let me focus on NAPCO ends in September. There's also Mills's bust angers minority. I don't know whether you followed that. Maybe if later you want to chip in, you can do that. But NAPCO ends in September, and government's flagship Nation Builders Corps program is to end by September 1, 2022, after 4 years of implementation. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced this during the presentation of the mid-year budget review in Parliament yesterday. He said the program during its implementation period engaged 100,000 young graduates for the world of work, with the government spending approximately 2.2 billion Ghana cedis. That's the first story. Next one, Agenda 111, work ongoing at 87 sites. That's according to Finance Minister. Of course, it has to do with hospitals and textbooks distribution to schools underway. Reverend Intim Fojo says so, Deputy Education Minister. And that is in the Finder newspaper. The final bit, government still needs 8 billion Ghana cedis to fix financial sector. And so what this means basically is that the banking sector cleanup and all of that, we still have a long way to go. The 22 billion we've spent, there's still more coming. An extra 8 billion Ghana cedis needed. That is in the graphic business. Quick reactions, and we shall wrap it up.
For the banking sector, I've always wondered why we don't prop up the banks rather than close them down. Because if my memory serves me right, I think that we needed 9 billion to ensure that we sustain the banks. And these are local banks that are all being closed down, not the foreign banks that we have. So if we can sustain our banks and make sure that they turn around and pay back what has been used to prop them, why don't we do that? Why are we closing down our banks and allowing the foreign banks to be the banks that are currently performing well and profitably?
We have the UniCredit albatross round our neck after the High Court's ruling. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. So then again, you ask yourself questions, and it goes back to policy, and it goes back to how we are rolling out our policies and how we are trying to help ourselves as Ghanaians. If we're not building our banks, then why are we looking at other banks and making sure that the other banks function? Why aren't we trying to make Ghanaians become prominent in the banking sector and do well?
Right.
That for me is a question. And we keep spending more money in making sure that we are cleaning up the sector and end up closing our local banks and allowing foreign banks to operate. Meanwhile, if we had propped up our local banks, we would have spent less.
Okay.
So then it's a question, it's a dicey question for me as to what to do when it comes to situations like that. Is it that we don't look at it properly, or there are other sinister motives as to who should be able to work in the banking sector in Ghana? And then
NAPCO is coming to an end September 1st. We've spent 2.2 billion Ghana cedis. Maybe we can wrap on that point.
And we haven't heard anything about the policy for NAPCO. So if it's coming to an end, is it because the IMF thinks that we should end it? Because then it creates a situation of unemployment for us as a people. Because if 100,000 people were employed in 4 years and you stop it, then it means that the new graduates are not getting employment. And so what happens to them? So it increases our level of unemployment. Is it that we don't have money to be able to sustain it? If we don't, why don't we have? And that's why I think that it's always important to review our policies.
Right.
If we don't review our policies, then we get to a head and then you throw your hands up in the air, you leave the children to walk the streets, they get more frustrated, and then you see all kinds of criminal activities rising because the children are frustrated, they need to get money to live. Some of them have struggled through school on their own, not being supported by anybody, and they've come out and they can't find jobs and they can't find employment. Again, it will lead to the leaving of our graduates from the country to seek greener pastures. Because if you can't get employed here, and there are jobs elsewhere that you can go and do that probably we look on as demeaning because you won't do it in your country, then definitely will get your children leaving and the drain will continue.
Right.
Because go out where they can get jobs, where they can earn something, where they can earn a living, and then that is what we'll see happening. So for me, we really need to...
A lot has to be done, doesn't it?
Exactly,
right.
and reconsider if it's with the children that are coming out that we are concerned about. Now, let me just say one thing shortly about
very quickly,
the
Liz, we've run out of time. Very quickly on that.
Sorry, just about the bus. I just wanted to say that in our parlance, we say that Amanze one saying, and if we are looking at promoting tourism and we are not looking at our culture and traditions, then there's a lot of things that we need to be getting right. And again, for me, if we are not united in the things we do as a people, then we definitely will fall. Because if you're not united, you won't stand. So we should get united and we should stand. And we should make sure that if we are promoting tourism, our culture and our traditions is who we are. That's what makes us who we are. And we should be looking at that.
Thank you so much for your reflections on all of these matters. I just had a feeling right before you go on a lighter note that looking at the shade of blue, the different shades of blue you're rocking this morning, my royal blue frames would have looked very good on you this morning. Maybe I'll consider getting you one.
Though. I've been admiring them, but I haven't said anything.
Thank you so much, Liz. Media consultant Liz Hayfranasari joined us for the news review, and do have a good day. Up next, we serve you sports. Do stay.
Investments continue to be made by government towards the development of a modern railway network. We believe in this because we know that creating an alternative means of transport, especially for goods, will ease the pressures on our roads and future impacts of global crude price hikes on farm products. For example, government is within target to complete the construction of the new Tema-Mpakadan rail line by the end of this year. The project is currently about 92% complete. The operationalization of the project is expected to enhance efficiency at the Tema port and provide the shortest possible transportation route between the southern and northern parts of Ghana. The Ministry of Roads and Highways is currently under review by GIF, Ministry of Roads and Highways, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Ministry of Finance. When completed, The concession agreement is expected to be approved by the PPP Committee, Cabinet and Parliament. The completed road will be tolled. Mr. Speaker, all new roads of this nature will be tolled.
Well, here we are discoursing on what exactly Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta told us yesterday in that statement, that speech, not necessarily a mid-year budget review, but there's a whole lot to dilate on. You heard part of it, the tolling of newly constructed roads, the Tema motorway extension will be tolled, among others, to come. We also have the dynamics when it comes to our GDP growth rate that has been slashed. We also have to talk about oil, non-oil GDP growth rates. We have the Fitch Solutions rating, among a pot of issues to discuss. Well, joining us for these discussions, Professor Lord Mensah. He is with the University of Ghana Business School. We also have political risk economist, Dr. Theo Acheampong, who joins the conversation. Dr. Acheampong, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining.
Pleasure.
Great. Let me also confirm that we have Professor Lord Mensah. Prof, a very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. If you can hear me.
I can, loud and
good morning. Yes. Okay, that's fine.
Right. All right. So just hold for me, Professor Mensah. I'll be coming to you shortly. But let me start with you, Dr. Theo Acheampong. Yesterday, first of all, I've hinted at the fact that I was a bit disappointed. It appears right now when our budgetary statements are to be presented, we can expect them to be presented 3-4 hours later than expected. And of course, what was slated in the order paper as a mid-year budget review turned out to be a statement. But your reflections on, what happened, what the finance minister said, from our GDP to staying within the confines of appropriation for 2022, to the slashing of GDP growth rates, to, of course, there was a bit of the blame game there, COVID-19,
yes.
Ukraine, Russia.
Yes.
What is your general reflection in a few minutes? This is just what you saw and heard.
Absolutely. So good morning once again, and good morning to Prof and the good people of Ghana. I think first it was an admission to an extent of the reality, right? So to an extent, the government recognizing that things are not going according to plan. And in the first few paragraphs of the statement, you can see some sort of attempt by the finance minister to make us aware of the things that are going on. But that's where sort of I deviate from what he said.
Right.
Because in an attempt to admit the reality, then it means we also need to have an understanding of what the root causes are. So basically, what led us to where we are now, where we're needing an IMF support or a bailout. And of course, he talks about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He talks about COVID. But interestingly, the bigger debate about our fiscal recklessness and the fact that we've been living more or less beyond our means and with the excessive borrowing, all of that compounding what is a very dire or difficult situation.
That was conveniently overlooked.
Well, to an extent, it wasn't really there. And because there are two fundamental causes for a crisis. You have the external shocks, such as Russia, Ukraine, and COVID. And then you also have internal or domestic factors, such as running inappropriate fiscal policies that then leads you to having major issues within the economy. But what I saw really was an attempt, if you look at the paragraph 14 of the statement, and the latter bit, it says that it is therefore disheartening when people want to pretend that these developments are purely domestic. I don't think anyone has, sought to create that impression.
Exactly.
I think it's that the mixture of both domestic and external factors, and we need to recognize that that is what has led us down this path.
But even in talking about the domestic, you remember the vice president at the Accra Business School made mention of the fact that even domestically, it is two-pronged, and it simply has to do with the previous administration. One, excess power and having to pay for that, and then the banking sector cleanup, of which we were told that now we're going to have to expend another 8 billion for.
I get that, but that's not fully the case, and you may ask yourself, for how long are we going to play the political game of blaming another administration, for some of the issues that we see ourselves? Because you look at the data, the last IMF program we exited in April of 2019.
Right.
Some of those metrics were looking okay, but just after we exited that program, we started debt binging all over again.
Going back to the same habits that led us to the IMF.
And even if you look at the statement that the IMF issued in March of 2019, when basically they said we're done well in some aspects of the program, but a number of the core structural benchmarks reforms that are needed, we missed many of them. The integration of GIFMIS, fixing the payroll system, addressing state-owned enterprises, and then the recourse to Eurobonds, for a lot of the financing needs that we need. All these major issues are still there. So I personally don't, buy wholly the argument that it's to do with the past administration. That is why we find ourselves, in this picture. Nevertheless, if you look at even the revenue numbers that the finance minister mentioned, and then the expenditure, we can unpack them. But for me, it was very obvious that we have a much, much bigger problem. So, look at the statement. The e-levy was not mentioned once in the statement that the finance minister made.
Not once. I know we'll be talking extensively about that later, but there was a whole lot that people were expecting.
Interestingly, only a few weeks ago, we were told that it's actually the e-levy or the IMF. So you would have expected at least an update within that statement of how much we have collected so far.
Were you disappointed that we didn't get that? Because guess what? You can't get it from the GRA. It must be the central bank through the finance minister. And I mean, he went mute on that point, especially on the back of some of the research we've seen from Imani Africa and what we've heard from the likes of
part of that research, for the Imani research, I was actually part of it.
Exactly, you spearheaded that.
And led that research. But I think it's important, especially from the revenue side. The government says that, yes, they're slashing down revenue now to about 96 billion, and expenditure to about 135 billion.
The minority has said that is not practical. Moving from 100.5 billion to 96 billion, that is going to be a tall order.
I think it's not going to be possible, and the deficit numbers, as has been presented yesterday, would not be met, just for two reasons. The first one being that as of half year, in the statement the finance minister read, we've actually already have done a 5.6 or 5.5% deficit.
Right.
And we're saying that by the end of this year, you're going to do 6.6%.
6.6.
So
that was our target.
1.6%. What that tells you is that you then have to do some serious cuts or serious adjustment in order for you to actually meet that 6.6%,
So just to look at those details, the GDP growth was projected at 5.8%. It came down to 3.7%. That is what was mentioned by Ufrieta. Non-oil GDP growth, 5.9%. Now we've whittled it down to 4.3%. Inflation, 8%. It's standing
almost
where
80%.
29.8%.
Yes.
The fiscal deficit, 7.4%, the projection, but now 6.6% is where we are at. And then primary surplus, 0.1%, upwards 0.4%. And of course, the gross international reserves of about 3 months mentioned there.
Yeah, I mean, and even when you look at the reserve figures, they've come down quite significantly. In the last year to date, we were almost 12 billion of gross reserves. Now you're talking 7-point-something billion. If you look at the net numbers, where it's the gross reserves now, the net reserves now is almost 3.5 or 3-point-something billion, around the crucial 3 months of import cover. So it tells you that
But just to stay
problems.
just to stay briefly on that point, you remember we were given some details, by the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament,
Yes.
who made mention of the fact that what they had said, 9 billion to 3 billion, whittled down to 3 billion, was actually not the case. That it was 7.7+ billion dollars. I just wanted to avert your mind to that.
It's a matter of semantics. There's gross reserves, there's net reserves.
Right.
Right. Whether you look at the gross or the net, the point is that the reserve numbers have dwindled. And
so the 7 point something is
we're
gross.
burning through a lot of our reserves to support imports and to prop up the economy. And if you use the net numbers, which a lot of investors actually pay heed to, I work within the markets in London, and I know when we speak to investors, these are the things that they're keen on, especially on net reserves, because that's what you literally more or less have access to.
Exactly.
And if you look at the net numbers,
salary.
if you look at the net numbers, it's actually come down from about 7.9 billion or so to 3.5 billion, more than half the amount in a matter of a year. So I get it that sometimes they want to play the politics and the NPP NDC things, but importantly, we need to have a bigger national conversation of what we need to do to fix the mess that we find ourselves in that regard.
I don't know yet whether we have Professor Lord Mensah, but let's also look at this briefly before we get interactive with him. So we don't have the full statement in terms of what was presented yesterday by Ken Ofori-Atta. It's 55+ pages. We have about 26 pages.
Yes.
That would also give us better scope in terms of other line items and smaller tidbits to look at. But there's also the issue of printing money. Isaac Adongo, Dr. Kasialato Forson of the minority side went hard on that. Look, two key issues. When you look at the Central Bank Act, if you're going to print money, you can't print more than 5% of your previous year's revenue, first of all. And two, Parliament must definitely be in the know. And so they accuse the central bank's governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, of some illegality. And they even go on to say that with the way the finance minister is going, he is digging his own grave into prison in some time to come. But the sums of money involved, 22 billion Ghana cedis, 48 million cedis, and the whole bit about we are sticking to our appropriations.
Yes.
What is fact? What is fiction?
Well, I mean, fact is the fact that the central bank has been supporting the government. And I mean, central banks all over the world, right, as part of their monetary policy coordination, can lend to the government. So it's two things they do. They actually print money and give it to the government, or they go and borrow money in what we call open market operations, where they will sell T-bills and other government securities to be able to then onward lend to the government. And if you look at the Bank of Ghana Act, you're absolutely right. In the amended Act section, I think 30 or 16 rather, that the total loans, advances, purchases of treasury bills and securities shall not at any time exceed 5% of the total revenue of the previous fiscal year. And then further down, it also says that the award or the making of this 5% in any previous fiscal year shall, or the governor of the Bank of Ghana shall notify the minister, Parliament, of the attainment of the limit under subsection 2, and then it goes on and on. So the key test really is that if we assume this 22 billion is fact, and I haven't seen any contrary numbers to that effect, then...
I mean, they point to the fact that within the statement presented by the minister himself, that basically is evinced in...
Yes, but did it then meet this, 5%
These requirements,
threshold? Right, and did they follow through the processes to be able to fully execute those amounts? What is very important also maybe to state here briefly is that Ghana currently has been locked out of accessing the international capital market for the most part of this year. So what that then means is that you have to borrow from somewhere. And if you look at the landscape, it's actually hard to going back to the domestic market, so selling T-bills and other securities, and to an extent, the central bank also printing some money to be able to forward or on lend to the government. What I don't know, and I cannot state for fact here, is whether that 22 billion is indeed all attributable to just the printing of money, or there are other things such as the T-bills and other components within that. We can unpack that a little bit further. But the key, or the other key point here, as I finish, is the fact that the printing of that money is part of what is driving that inflation as we see currently. So the deficit financing by the central bank is a core driver of inflation in the country. So it's not just a question of imported versus non-imported inflation, or Russia, Ukraine, and the domestic factors, but the central bank's responsibility in that regard is part of what is actually been driving the inflation we're seeing recently.
And speaking of inflation, when you look at the monetary policy rate that has been held at 19%, what does that show?
I think that was a good decision. I expected it to actually keep it, or the monetary policy to keep it at 19%. Just
you expected it to stay at 19%?
I expected it to stay at 19% because any further hikes would have actually choked off more liquidity from the system and even made the cost of borrowing much higher for businesses. And number two, because the previous rate hikes were that steep, you need to give yourself a bit of time to see if indeed they're actually working in bringing down the rate of inflation. So I think that was a good decision, and we must commend the central bank for staying that course.
What would be the impact of that? I mean, the reasoning behind it, what would be the impact of that? Because we've seen what inflation has done. We've seen what the policy rate, how it has affected lending and all of that. So what would be the real impact of maintaining the policy rate?
Anytime your policy rate goes up, of course, the commercial banks also make an adjustment in that regard. And ultimately, the cost of borrowing goes up for you and I if we want to take money. The principal reason why they hiked up the rates the previous 2 times by 4.5% is just because of the rising inflation. But as some of us expect, inflation should start moderating as we go into August and September, also because you have like the food season coming up. And in that regard, the move that they made currently to keep it at 19% is just to see if in the next few weeks, inflation starts coming down. And if we see inflation coming down, then of course, the bank will take further corrective action or measures to further sort of reduce the rate. Because ultimately, you want to get liquidity in the system. You want to get, borrowings going, and you want to be able to support the good people of Ghana to be able to, afford credit. Because if the economy doesn't grow, then you're going to see job losses and you're going to see more protests on the street ultimately.
Let me try to see whether I have Professor Lord Mensah available. Prof, a very good morning to you. Can you hear me?
Good morning to everyone, and good morning to my good friend at the studio.
Right, Dr. Theo Champong, of course. So for you, what would be your very simple, reflection on the happenings from yesterday and some of I know you've been listening to us, some of what we've been discussing from, the monetary policy end of things, the GDP revised figures, and basically the avoidance, so to speak, of certain core areas of our national, reflection. What would be your thinking on the delivery yesterday by Ken Ofori-Atta?
Well, I think if you look at the entire budget, taking it from the expenditure cut and then revenue cut, I see a government that does not have money, but then government wants to still spend. It's clearly the discretionary expenditures that we're looking at, government possibly cutting them. We did not see any massive cut in there. And then also I saw an indirect expenditure cut, i.e. with the PPP agreement to construct the Tema motorway. It's more or less an indirect, expenditure cut, because government is not going to absorb fully that road construction, but then try to find equity in the entire agreement by, sourcing funds from GIIF. So it gives the signal that, yes, indeed, government may still want to have 8 projects outlined in the 2022 budget to go on. If you look at Agenda 111, for instance, it gave the signal that 87 of them is still ongoing. I mean, government is still bent on, building 111 hospitals at a time that we are halfway through an expenditure, we have a problem with it. So I was a bit disappointed because, this budget that was read does not set the tone for the IMF expectations. Because engaging IMF, we know that they come in with some, possible programs by cutting expenditure and then also having revenue enhanced measures. If you look at the various revenue enhanced measures that the government put in place in this review, I don't see any serious thing that we've not, seen before. And then also being silent on, e-levy. We did not hear anything on e-levy at all. At this time, I was thinking maybe you should have been able to tell us how the e-levy is faring, and then in the end, possible projects that they may have started with to whet the appetite of Ghanaians, and then possibly you get a full buy-in of Ghanaians to come back to that e-levy, electronic transfer of funds. So effectively, I see it to be government that is still bent on spending, not setting the tone, to meet the IMF possible conditions that they may come with.
Prof, even when Ken says that they're going to stick to the appropriation for 2022, you still see the signal that they want to spend.
Oh yes, I see the signal that they want to spend because all the projects they outlined in 2022, they still want to go on with them. And as a result of that, I don't see a government that is ready to reduce its expenditure.
Speaking of expenditure, let's look at, so there are so many angles to actually contemplate, but let's quickly look at the sustainability of our debt before I get on to other matters. You made mention of that and how it will affect, any program that we'll get from the IMF. As of the latest figures we have, we're looking at 393 billion Ghana cedis, the equivalent of 54.4 billion American dollars. And then you add that to what the minority gleans from the statement from yesterday, that we've printed money. We're looking at 22 billion plus 48 million, whether legal or not. And then you add to the fact that we have arrears of about 25 billion Ghana cedis that is owed to, that are owed to contractors, to WAEC, to other institutions. How is this going to shape up, especially in respect of the sustainability of our debt?
See, if you look at the debt sustainability issue, I have a serious problem with it in a sense that, the debt accumulations and all those, who produces the numbers for the minister? It's a technocrat we have at the ministry. They produce the numbers for the minister. So effectively, if we're not getting the numbers right, then probably somebody might not be doing his job at the ministry.
Are you suggesting, like the minority says, that maybe the numbers are being cooked?
Probably, because I get worried when we keep on tossing our economic numbers here and there. Recently we had an issue of our international, reserves dropping to a level where, we called in for an approval of, 750 million. But then in the end, it turns up that that wasn't the drop that is expected. You see, when you provide that kind of uncertainty, it
appears we have a bit of a challenge with Professor Lord Mensah's connection. We'll try to get him back and have him make his point. We'll see whether technology will be nice to us today so we can actually have this conversation. Prof, can you hear me? Okay, so Yes, Prof. I think the connection is better now. Please go ahead. Hello, Professor Mensah. All right, we'll work on that and try to get Professor Mensah back. So, in terms of sustainability, Dr. Echampong, it's going to be quite a hurdle.
Of course. I mean, look, even before the current statement, the World Bank had already classified us as being at high risk of external debt distress.
Right.
And
we're seeing the chart from Bloomberg telling us that we're just second to El Salvador. So.
Well, I mean, so that has been an issue, and this has actually been an issue even before the pandemic, before Russia-Ukraine, right, in that regard. But Prof makes an interesting point, which I think is quite vital. How much trust can we put in the statistics that is being churned out by different government agencies, right? Especially given that in the past, even the IMF has had cause to question some of the numbers that have been provided by i.e. Finance Ministry and related agencies for that matter. Like Prof is saying, I also get worried a lot, and I deal with a lot of these investors as a day job. When they come to you and they're basically asking you questions, can we trust the statistics that your government has actually put out there? Because
those questions are posed. Can you trust? So there's mistrust.
I get asked those questions pretty much every time, right?
Wow.
And then you have to more or less go back and say, I mean, these are the official numbers. Sometimes, yes, you make some corrections.
Official numbers that you cannot necessarily
make some
corroborate.
Changes. Well, I'm not in the nick of the action, so you cannot corroborate. But of course, you talk to them and give them the assurance that, these are the numbers as we know. And then you can cross-check with some other indicators, high-frequency data indicators, to see if they're in the right ballpark or not. But we shouldn't, at this stage of our development, have been having a debate about whether the reserves and the deficit and all those numbers are right or wrong. We should have gone way past at that point. But the big issue really here is that even at our 78% currently debt to GDP ratio, and the IMF is doing the debt sustainability analysis now as part of all of the assessment they need to do before lending to Ghana. I foresee us crossing beyond that 80% threshold by the
because
end
we're
of
at 78.3.
Well,
and already
we did 80, and then we adjusted the denominator, the GDP.
Exactly.
And
some are saying that if we add our other debts, other line items, it will definitely shoot over 80%.
It is going to. And then the issue also with, particularly this administration, has been this above the line, below the line reporting, where certain items don't make their way into the final debt numbers. So for sometimes they would exclude the financial sector bailout, energy sector cleanup as kind of exceptional items. But they're all part and parcel of the debt.
It's all part of the debt
and the deficit numbers, right? Anyway,
are those things going to injure? Are they going to
80%.
injure our negotiations with the IMF?
I think the IMF is going to ask for honesty. The IMF is going to ask the government to come and open their books. It's going to be one of the key conditions for any onward lending. And that is what also, to an extent, gives me a bit of assurance, right? That we would know what maybe the true state, to borrow other words, of the economy would be, because the government cannot, attempt to put certain numbers in places that they shouldn't be. And remember that the IMF, before the lending, would do what we call the Article 4 consultations, which eventually would actually lead to a report that they publish on their website on the state of the Ghanaian economy, or indeed any other economy for that matter. So I particularly am actually looking forward to that report. But I mean, we do have issues with some of the statistics that are being churned out. And I think it is not right that as a country we should be debating these numbers, because as a Ghanaian, I get worried when an investor calls me and asks me, is your government churning out the right numbers.
Let me engage Professor Lord Mensah before I come back to you, Dr. Theo Champong. Prof, you left off with some thoughts you were sharing. You can take off from there.
I was looking at the inconsistencies in our numbers, economic numbers. I mean, clearly, we really have to be careful with that because you look at the three economic arms of, governance, that is Bank of Ghana, looking at the Ministry of Finance, and then possibly adding on the executive, I mean, if I put it that way. And you keep on getting different numbers from them when it comes, even Parliament is part of it, when it comes to, our economic indicators. It doesn't speak well of us. And this also smacked, on whether we really have a very good information flow across these institutions when it comes to our economic management. Economic management and its projections has to do with, having the data and taking decisions with the data. So if it turns up that you have a different data set at, different units within the country, you may not have come out with very good policies. And I'm not surprised that we keep on having inconsistencies in our, policies. Even the budget that was read, 2022 budget, it was made clear that if we accept the E-levy, we may not go to the IMF. But then it turns up that we went to the IMF. But then the E-levy, we went to the IMF because the E-levy was not giving us the numbers that is expected. I asked myself, who did that projection? A projection where, you could not even make up to 10% of what is expected from, the E-levy. So for me, I think we have problems when it comes to our economic management. The inconsistencies are too much.
Do you feel we will meet sustainability levels as far as the IMF is concerned? Dr. Theo Champong was just talking about the Article 4 engagements that will have to be held. Do you feel we will meet those? Because guess what? There are other countries like Sri Lanka that have been engaging the IMF, and we all have to go through the same process, meet sustainability levels before the IMF will accept and give us the sums of money required.
That is why I gave you the signal that the budget, the review, does not really set the tone to the level of sustainable, fiscal discipline that IMF is expected of us before they give us any facility that they want. So for me, I think from that end, if a government is still having that appetite of spending, a government is still, having a problem with raising revenue, for which revenue measures put in place in the review were not that clear. They are not new things that we've not seen before. Things like electronic VAT, introduction and all those. We've seen it and we've heard it before. So I'm wondering what difference are they going to make in our revenue, generation. So for me, I think we've not positioned ourselves clearly, to have an IMF program from this review.
I want to run two quick things by you. Doc, I see you have a lot on your mind. I'll be coming to you. I want to run two quick things by you, Prof. But the first has to do with spending and sticking within appropriations. So quoting the finance minister, he says, in spite of the underperforming revenues and strong external headwinds, we are not seeking additional funds in the mid-year review. We are determined to efficiently use the windfall from the upstream petroleum sector to make up for our revenue shortfall and aggressively improve our revenues even as we rationalize expenditure. So he's talking about the windfalls from the upstream petroleum sector. How sustainable is that? Right now, we know on the back of what has happened between Russia and Ukraine, yes, oil prices have seen some of the highest in recent decades. But how sustainable is that to bank on? And also put that side by side with the fact that the net in terms of our debt keeps widening, both internal and external. And guess what? In that same statement, the finance minister made mention of the fact that Ghana still needs some 8 billion Ghana cedis to fix the financial sector. Professor Mensah? it appears the connection has been lost once more. We'll try to get Professor Mensah back. Maybe let me come quickly to you on that.
Yeah, so let's unpack them. Let's start with the windfalls argument. So in the 2022 budget, the government expected that they would be getting about $1 billion coming through from oil and gas, upstream oil and gas exports from 3 fields that we currently produce. Actually, if you look at the production levels, they've gone down slightly. However, because the price has been high, that has more than
we're getting a lot more
for that. And in the half-year report that PIAC issued recently, and also Bank of Ghana issued, we've gotten a little over $700 million for the first half of this year coming through. If you do the projections, and this is an area that I work in, so I kind of know the numbers, we possibly could get between 1.5 and maybe $1.7 billion of oil monies coming in.
So that would be a windfall of about $500 to $700 million.
But to put it also in context, this would have been the first time in the history of Ghana that would have then crossed that 1 billion revenue mark. Right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, from 3 fields. Again, just a bit of history here. In 2009, 2010, when Jubilee was just about coming on production, the projections had been made that Jubilee alone at one point could get us up to $1.8 billion a year.
The Jubilee field alone?
Yes, that never happened because of cost issues and then because of the price. There will be some windfall this time around. If you assume you're going to even get $500, $700 million, question fundamentally is that windfall going to be enough to really fill the size of the gap or the hole that we have in terms of the deficit and the debt numbers?
And even considering that when it comes to even oil, our own internal needs, because this doesn't suffice to even take care of our own internal needs. We also have to import at the same time.
Of course. So, I mean, at the same time, last year we spent $2.7 billion importing petroleum products into the country because you have a refinery that hasn't been working and there's a whole monopoly within the system that then leads to a lot of inefficiencies in the downstream side of the industry. So yeah, you're getting 1.7 billion possibly this year. But at the same time, you're spending far more of that actually importing petroleum products into the country. So the net effect actually is one that is practically nothing to write home about in that regard. So your trade balance or your balance of payment, yes, we see some improvement, but ultimately we're still having to fork out more to be able to support petroleum products importation into the country. So you do have some windfall, but realistically it's actually not enough to be able to fix the gap. Then there are 3 other things that I think the minister also talked about. Rationalizing expenditures. That is where we need to do a lot of work on. And then there's things about property rates, and then the reinstatement of some of the road tolls. I have always supported road tolls one way or the other, especially on your key, economic routes, right?
Were you disappointed they took it off?
It never made sense to me.
Because it was raking in 200,000 CDs every day.
What we needed to do was to find efficient means of collecting those tolls, 1. And then number 2, make sure that they actually used to fix those very roads, right? Those key economic roads that you have. But luckily, they zero rated it. So technically, it was never scrapped. It was just you bring the rate down to 0. So now you can actually go back and reinstate some of those tolls on those key roads. Now they say they're going to do under PPP and some sort of arrangements like that. But secondly,
so that these
I also
think self-funding projects over time.
But I also think every car in this country must pay some form of road tax or the other. And this happens all over, the world. For example, in the UK where I'm based, anytime I go to renew my roadworthiness, we call it MOT in the UK. As part of that, you have to pay a vehicle tax, right? Based on the type of your vehicle, the emissions, and all of that. And I think we have the infrastructure now through DVLA to actually be able to collect some form of, road tax.
So that's the next step. That's something we
in addition to whatever we actually would collect via the tolls. But the tolls would only be on your key economic routes, your Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, or Elubo to Ho, those sort of places. Yes, Accra, Tema, those places you need definitely to toll them.
Some would also tell you that with all of these tolls, I mean, there could be levy or tax fatigue. So, like you're saying, it should be specific for certain major routes and not beyond those routes.
It cannot be on all routes. It has to be on the major routes.
Because there's also the issue of traffic on some stretches.
Yeah, so the issue of the traffic can actually be solved by using digital technologies, right? Where you could use your Momo and other smart cards and things like that to significantly reduce the traffic issue. I don't think the traffic issue should prevent or stop us from collecting those tools, because it can actually be solved one way or the other.
We'll try to, if possible, maybe get Professor Mensah on the phone so we can have a proper conversation, because it appears technology is hindering or hampering the flow. So maybe if we could get him on phone, that wouldn't be bad. But yesterday, your own colleague at the Andrews University in the United States, Professor Pepra, made mention of the fact that, look, we must also take a look at some of the social intervention programs. We've not paid LEAP beneficiaries for 6 months. NAPCO beneficiaries are also in some sort of limbo. Yeah. With all of these, then looking at free SHS, and some have said that free SHS is not the problem. The problem lies elsewhere. Free SHS is just taking a pittance of the money, but because we have cracks in the system, it's also reflecting on feeding and other components that feed into free SHS. But he suggested that maintain free SHS, like Bright Appeal of Child Rights International has put forward, and scrap something like planting for food and jobs. It's not serving its purpose. What's your take?
Yeah, I think a number of the interventions, we need to holistically look at them, right? Which ones are working? Which ones aren't working? How do we...
So you are for a review of the social intervention
across the board. No two ways about that. In fact, yesterday somebody told me, look, yeah, Theo, you're going on TV. Let them know that we haven't been paid our the NAPCO or something for 8 or so months, to that extent.
About 10 months.
Yeah, so there are real issues. And the fact is that we keep promising, we keep making these huge interventions with very little coming in terms of revenue to actually support them. And of course, we sometimes don't also then fully reflect on or review these programs to ensure that you have cost and efficiency savings as well. I think even on free SHS, the scope for efficiency savings, the scope to also allow those who are prepared to, put some money on the table to support their wards and their schools to do that. I personally have never believed in the state taking on that full responsibility for boarding and feeding, right? In that regard. And every little that we save can actually go in other areas. So even, let's stick with the free SHS argument. The biggest needs that we have in our education system is actually down the education chain in your basic education, your JSS, your primary, your kindergartens, and then your JHS, right? We need to address those issues. And we know that we have revenue challenges. So surely, what I would have then expected is that if we make any savings on free SHS and allow, say, parents to contribute something towards the running of the boarding facilities and things like that, those savings can actually be channeled into building more schools.
Downstream, right.
That is where the biggest issues are.
Because we still have schools under trees and dilapidated structures.
Within our educational setup in that regard. And then you have other programs, Planting for Food and Jobs. NAPCO is being retired, but you're going to have USTAT and all those things. Right. And if you look at some of the academic studies, in terms of the effect or the effectiveness of some of these interventions, it leaves a lot to be desired. So basically, we end up pouring money down the drain or into a leaking basket.
We have Professor Mensah on phone now. Prof, so you were making the point about windfalls from the upstream petroleum sector vis-a-vis the 8 billion Ghana cedis that we are also going to cough up again still talking about fixing the financial sector or the banking sector?
Yes, of course. I mean, the upstream petroleum inflows that the minister talks about. For me, the net effect, because we import fuel as well. So if price of fuel is going up on the global market, even though what you export, can give you more, what you import, and I think over the years we'll be importing more than what we export. So the net effect is not something that we can talk about, because you still have to buy crude at that market price that we're looking at. And look at our budget deficit. The budget deficit that we're looking at, I mean, he sliced it down to around 36 point something billion. And if you're talking about windfall, how much are we going to rake in from these inflows for us to, fill in that budget deficit? For the government to say that I still want to go ahead spending at the free SHS, I still want to go ahead to spend on USTAT, I still want to go ahead to spend on Agenda 111. Effectively, these are all discretionary, expenditures. And as I indicated to you earlier, government is not prepared to cut down expenditures as, expected, to set the tone, to position itself so that we can get an IMF program as quick as possible. So from the outline, you realize that the government did not mention yield levy. And one thing that I'm happy, which I think is a direction that the country must go, is the privatization of the roads that we have in this country. You realize that in the budget, which for me is an indirect expenditure cut, he indicated in the review that, look, we're going to partner with a private man to have, the Tema motorway, but then government is going to realize its equity in there by sourcing funds from the GIIF to put in as, part of the government equity so that we can at least have control maybe on the pricing or something. But, when it comes to the private man, you cannot go and say that you may want to use yield levy to pay for that, road construction. No. The private man may want to see exactly the revenue that is coming from roads. Yield levy has been earmarked for so many things. It has been earmarked for USTAT. It has been earmarked for roads. It has been earmarked. Part of the Agenda 111 is still in the yield levy. So effectively, engaging the private man, I believe that will call for the replacement to bring back the road tolls, as the minister indicated, and that should be the way to go. For me, it's about time we pick some major roads and give it to the private man. But whilst we're doing that, we provide the alternative that the government will still have control over. So it is the right direction to go, and effectively it is more or less an indirect expenditure cut because government is not absorbing that construction on its balance sheet. So yes, that is what I see on the budget.
Let's take a quick look at two matters. Social intervention programs. Which ones do you feel? How do you feel we should tackle them? Should some of them go? And then there's also.
I was surprised. It's too late now. I was surprised. It's too late now to say that some of them should go.
Because the finance minister said they were sticking to their guns. They wouldn't touch them.
You see, if you look at the budget, right? I was looking at, the budget reflecting on the recent, Ghana Statistical Service data that they brought about on inflation. If you look at the disaggregation on inflation, you realize that clearly the household essentials are the ones, causing inflation to go up. So you're talking about food that we must eat, you're talking about water, you're talking about transportation. Now, if you look at the food security measures that the minister, laid out in the, in the review, clearly it doesn't seem to be solving that problem that we have in our homes. And so, I'm not surprised that he said the end of the year inflation is going to be around 26-point-something%. It means that it's come to accept that inflation has come to stay. Inflation has come to stay. In the end, will propel interest rates to go up. Cost of borrowing is going to go up.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, fine, of course, pensioners who have their funds in in investment are going to enjoy, but then they still have to buy at high price when it comes to. Because
So
if you look at the food
it's a
security,
win-lose situation. You win here, you lose on the other end.
That is how it has been always. That is how it has been always. But we are looking forward to, economic restructuring, for which at the end of the day, the basics that we consume in our homes will be cheaper for us. So if you look at the food issues, the food measures that he put up here, he's talking about, if you permit me to read, place a temporary ban on grains, so maize, rice, and soya export.
Right.
Promote the use of organic fertilizer and cultivation of crops such as roots, which require less fertilizer. You see, we know very well that our dependence of Ukraine and Russia for our agriculture input policy was one source. And so, what did we do to ensure that the food that we grow will be staples that our weather can withstand it without necessarily importing much fertilizer? We didn't concentrate on that. So, for me, the food measures that he put in place, I'm emphasizing on the food measures because of the inflation disaggregation. If you go on the inflation disaggregation, you realize that food is costing more. Transportation is also costing more. Transportation, we can't do much about it until we fix our roads very well. And then, the other one, with the other side, which we don't have control over, is the global, crude price. But then, if we fix our road very well, it should be able to have a way of, toning down transportation. So we will have controlled, inflation in our environment. So I would say that yes, it's a review. But then what we saw in the the November 2021 budget that was read for 2022, we don't see any much different in there. If you ask me.
Now, Fitch Solutions has downgraded us. Initially we had an IMF, grading of, our economy, hoping that would get a growth of 5.2%, the World Bank 5.0%, and Fitch Solutions giving us 4.8%. They've downgraded us to 2.6%. Add that to the fact that we still have to deal with a certain COLA, cost of living allowance for labor. What is going to be the impact of that, especially looking at our deliberations or negotiations with the IMF?
Yeah, of course, that is going to be more or less a part of an expenditure that the government hasn't got control over. When it comes to the balance sheet of a public entity like Ghana, you have interest payment. You don't have control over them. You must pay. You have, what we call it. You have salaries and emolument. You must pay them, and the projections that comes with it. So if you are budgeting in 2022 and you expect that inflation can go up to a certain point where, labor may demand, their fair share of increase in price, then of course you should budget that into your the expenditure projections when it comes to labor force. Those ones are easy to project. So I will not say that, for the fact that workers are requesting for COLA and then, there are some increment just to catch up with inflation may derail that stream of expenditure. If you are budgeting, the most difficult part is the discretionary ones. The non-discretionary ones, like interest payment and salary, the possible increment. So the government cannot tell us or cannot tell Ghanaians that they least expected, that kind of demand from the labor market. So it is easy to project expenditure and salary, and I don't think government will have problems meeting those demands.
The last bit I'm going to run by the two of you before we escalate the conversation. It has to do with what was not said yesterday. And a lot of people said, okay, so a lot of what was said may be expected or nothing new. But what was not said? What was left out? The savings being made by government on the back of the 30% salary cuts for the executive, fuel cuts, among others. No details. Also no details on the e-levy, which we're going to go hard on shortly. In fact, there were also no proper details on COVID-19. We've heard from the chairperson of the COVID-19 Trust Fund, former Chief Justice Sophia Akakpo, on the unavailability of details concerning COVID-19 spending. And quote, she says, "To be very honest, I was rather surprised at the Minister of Finance because our COVID-19 Trust Fund figures were available to the Finance Ministry." I'll take your points on that, Prof, and then I'll let go of you with your concluding comments. And I'll bring that same question to you.
Well, you see, in Ghana, I've noticed something in Ghana, from the institutional level all the way to the national level.
And what is that?
We love parading liabilities. We love parading expenditures. We love parading, but there are some critical decisions that we take. There are some critical policies that we roll out that is able to generate, that is able to save cost. And cost savings is an indirect revenue generation. So I'm surprised for the minister not to report on some of the cuts they made, the 30% Article 71, compensations are cut, and then also cut down on 50% of fuel, a free fuel for these workers here and there.
Cuts down on travel as well.
Exactly. It should have come out with a figure to tell us that having done that, we've been able to save this amount. And then again,
do you feel this was deliberate? For example, when it comes to the e-levy, because because we are not raking in what we expected.
That is why I mentioned earlier that we love parading liabilities, forgetting about the possible assets that we have or revenues that we are generating. If you take for instance the e-levy, we know e-levy has trust issues. E-levy has problems. Ghanaians are not buying into the e-levy. If you look at the mobile money volumes of transactions over the years, so how do you convince them? It's a matter of telling them this is what we've rigged in, and this is what we intend to do with the money. And by so doing, Ghanaians, if they realize that you are using the money for maybe a road, you are using the money to provide a toilet facility, or those uncompleted toilet facilities scattered around, the country. If you are using the money to finish all of them, Ghanaians will buy into it. Because at the end of the day, the projections we did for e-levy wasn't that spot on. And so, if you really want to convince Ghanaians to buy into it, it's a matter of, providing them more information on it and then telling them what you intend to use the money for. And in 6 months' time, they should see exactly what you are using the money for. So for me, I have a problem with the way we report most of our balance sheet. And it's not at a national level alone. It has to do with the institutional level as well.
Well, interesting thoughts there. Prof, we'll have to hang the conversation here. We're grateful that you took the time to join us, unless you have any parting words.
No, I'm fine. I think I was driving. I had to pull off and then, speak to the program.
Right. We're very grateful. Professor Lord Mensah is with the University of Ghana Business School. Let's come into the studio for your take on that before we get into a proper conversation tearing apart the e-levy.
The government said they're going to reduce the expenditure by about 20 to 30%, right? Across the board, and there are some specific line items. But if you're going to be making 20-30% cut in expenditure, and you look at the revised numbers where your expenditure is coming down from 137.5 to 135.7, surely that's not anywhere close to that 20 to 30% cut that they had announced. So I think it was more rhetoric and less of the substance, right? In that regard,
more talk than walk.
But also it goes back to a lot of the points Prof was making too about the fiscal rigidities within the budget itself. That the interest payment servicing actually has gone up this year. And then you have the employee compensation and then the other subventions that you have to make to district assemblies, common fund, and those other. So then you have very little left in terms of fiscal space to be able to spend on other kind of priority areas. So I always, for me, thought that the 20 to 30% cut was going to be a bit problematic to actually meet, looking at those structural rigidities that we're talking about in that regard. And then secondly, on the issue of, COVID-19 spending and all of that, a few of us have actually called, and I think the finance minister has also given the Auditor General the kind of get-go or his blessing to audit the COVID funds. And for me, why this is really important is that when you look at the Auditor General's reports over the years, you see consistent hemorrhaging of public finances, right? A lot of financial irregularities, from payroll fraud to things to do with tax irregularities and other things to do with how we award contracts, and all those things cumulatively add up to some of the inefficiencies that we see. I was quite happy to hear that finally the tax exemptions bill has actually been passed by Parliament. I think I heard it on the radio coming into the studio this morning. And I think that will go a long way to streamline things, because that's another area where we can make major savings in that regard. And then, the point about food security, which Prof talked about. I mean, we know that we need to eat and grow and eat what, we can as much locally. The problem has been that when you look at the agri-value chain and how we use, scientific information, sometimes it's a bit lacking. So I know that the CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, they've done tremendous work over the years about developing, climate-resistant, maybe maize or sorghum or millet or whatever varieties.
Right.
They've done work on, how you can use organic farming to be able to get as much of the yields as you can by applying fertilizer. But I ask you, where is all this work? It's lying somewhere, sometimes gathering dust and rotting away. So it tells you really fundamentally that the way we have developed our industrial ecosystem and the links between agriculture and value-added manufacturing, we need to do a lot more.
We need to look at that. So we've been asking you as well this morning, what do you think about the e-levy thus far? We're getting into a conversation on that, but we hit the streets. Mamiesi Thompson hit the streets interacting on our latest installment of the Living Standard series. And this is what she found out.
And yet, even the other time, me be saying this car was hamani, but me friend, no. I say, "Mami saying scan man no be babeji." I was just say, "11 beti, intino." Me man no amra no beji. And also ma ukada man, ene beji scan koi.
Well, at first it was going well, but since the e-levy come, it let the transaction come down a bit. They are not coming like how they come at previous.
To begin his day, Joseph, a mobile money vendor at the Circle station, punches through his phone. Joseph has been struggling to keep his customers for the past 4 months. He claims that many of them have decided to keep their cash in their wallets. He attributes his predicament to the implementation of the electronic transaction levy.
Well, at first it was going well, but since the e-levy come, it let the transaction come down a bit. They are not coming like how they come at previous because of the e-levy, because the education does not go well with the customers, and so we the vendors, we have to come out again and explain to them that the e-levy doesn't affect withdrawal. At first, people deposit their money into their wallets, and later, anytime that they need it, then they will come and withdraw it. But now they say they will keep it in the house because of the e-levy.
Before the levy, he used to transact more than 50 mobile money requests daily, apart from selling call cards. But now, the numbers have reduced to 20. On bad days, he gets even less. He is frustrated with the slow pace of business.
15, less than 20. People are coming, like for instance, if there are 50 people come daily, For if I get like 20 Ghana on it, now that they dropped to 15, it affects me a lot. Because whenever they do withdraw, I get a profit. So when they're not coming again, I've not got any profit. It has been reduced. It has been reduced. That's what I give you the examples. Like for instance, first, and I save about more than 50 people, but now it has been reduced. They are not coming.
Joseph informs me that he is unable to make ends meet. He is married with 2 children. He claims that if things don't improve, he might not be able to pay his rent or provide for his home. He has asked the government to review the policy.
Ever since the government employed this, this e-levy things, it let the business come down. In fact, I'm not getting any money to do that, like giving a chop money in the house. Even my kids are going to school, feeding fee. People are not doing the Momo business again. They are not doing it. Most of my friends, they have stopped. Ghanaians, what they are saying is they have been paying a lot of tax. So this 11 to attach again is too much. Now the system too is dull. So that's it. To me, what I see, if they can remove it, I think it will help us.
According to recent data from the Bank of Ghana, mobile money is a multi-billion cedi business with a growth of 8.4% to 77.4 billion cedis in June. In May, transactions fell by 18.58% to 71.4 billion Ghana cedis, but recovered in June. Well, the crystallized Momo vendor does not agree with the survey results. On the tiptoe lane, it is the largest mobile money vendor. However, the e-levy is having an effect on their sales. According to Grace, their revenue has decreased.
Transactions I slow. First, now you to me throw your book now you record the transactions. Sometimes it to me record the 5 leaves and I say bibisa, but see there. Sometimes and drew full page.
Our transactions have dwindled. We used to fill 5 pages of our books with customers every day. But recently, we are unable to complete a full page. The e-levy has really affected our sales. Even our cash-in commission delays. We are yet to receive for this month.
Like a brosa, but e-levy in the buy, I think last month a cash-in commission buy was 700 BB. This month cash-in commission and buy.
She informs me that she no longer receives tips because customers have complained that their transaction costs have risen. Her salary also remains the same. Grace, on the other hand, believes that a review of the levy can turn things around.
Time, as I say, in Siamino, Ebia, if I say me pay say 19th, I ain't Siamid 19th, like a
payment of my salary delays these days. Apart from that, I don't receive gifts anymore, and that makes life difficult.
Yeah, now you live in Abanama. Say I Mbasa. It is say time necessary to say can in Tia. So mean chair dia sky maybe with the baby biana.
Some customers couldn't help but expressed their displeasure with the tax.
And yet, even the other time, me be saying this car wa money for me friend no. I say mami saying scan man no be babeji. What can they share? I got them say 11 year beti intino. Me mano no amra no beji. And also ma ukada man ene beji.
The e-levy is not good. Not long ago, I tried sending money to someone. He vehemently decided against mobile money. He later came with an Okada to collect the money to avoid e-levy deduction. Apart from that, I personally sent 300 cedis to someone. I realized they deducted almost 5 cedis. I will not send mobile money again.
Oh, inti me desire say me fa scan go me phone so en send ni bio. Me send ni scan on me phone so bio.
Transaction, even including Abu-Baidoo.
As a caterer, we do a lot of transactions, but the introduction of e-levy has increased cost of doing business. These days, We'd rather send the money than to send Momo.
Send this can and offer more ablution because of side 11 I might be a bear but some boom.
All right, so mobile money vendors, together with people who use mobile money, sharing their thoughts. Some things that stood out for me. And just don't you forget, we're going to be interacting with you as well in the course of the show. We'd like to find out, e-levy, how do you feel about that? And also reflecting on the finance minister's delivery yesterday. But it hit me when the lady at Crystallized Center was talking about 5 leaves to 1 leaf. That's a decrement of about 20%, in terms of how much they're getting now, from 100% to about 20% or less.
80% or also less.
A tumble of about 80%. Yeah. And guess what? It's even affecting her salary.
Of course, yes.
How do you react to those dynamics? Do you think it's time to take a second look at the e-levy, review it? Because yesterday, interacting with Dr. Joseph Obeng of GUTA, the president, he said we should bring it down to 0.5%.
Yeah, I mean, a number of us actually have called for same, even though personally I have never supported the e-levy, and I'm on my position on this is on the record, it's quite clear. But the 3 or 4 issues with the e-levy. There's an issue of poor design, which effectively resulted from the lack of broad-based consultation. This was just...
This was mentioned by one of your colleagues yesterday.
It was just sprung
lack
up on
of
Ghanaians,
proper design,
right?
and adaptability.
Yes, because, I mean, there are some tax policy principles that often underpin any design of tax, right? That normally the tax has to be neutral, it doesn't have to be arbitrary, and it should be easy to implement or administer. All of those things, in my view, didn't really feature in the design of this tax. I recall the government saying that, well, they surveyed about 10,000 or so Ghanaians in the lead up to the implementation of the promotion of the e-levy. But to date, that survey and the results of it has never been made public to anyone, as far as I'm aware, right? So you now come back to the second or third issue about the issue of then the lack of trust, right, within the system and the poor, call it PR or communications that also occasioned the rollout of the e-levy. So when you add all of those things together, for me, it is not a surprise to hear the lady and other.
And I was going to ask you whether you felt that was reflective of
Absolutely. I mean, we did a few surveys. Imani did a survey. I was part to have led that survey. CDD also did a survey fairly recently. And the conclusions from that survey were largely that you're seeing some sort of reaction to the introduction of that e-levy. And the biggest sign in all of this is if the e-levy had been performing, I am sure the finance minister yesterday would have come to the House and said, we're collecting as much as we thought we would.
So this was basically an attempt to hide
clearly there are
major
problems. And people have said, even in our survey, that, okay, we don't like the tax, but even if you force us to pay, we're prepared to consider maybe 0.5%, something like that. Because it makes no sense for me why you should be paying more than the cost of the service in actual tax, right? So the amount you pay is more or less capped around 1%, right, of the total transfer that you make, which would include, right, the service charge from the telcos, etc. And you're not asking me to pay 1.5%, which is more than the actual cost of using the service for no work done.
Because now even some telcos, at least one of them, MTN, has brought it down to 0.75%.
Exactly.
So basically, even if you're doing 1.5%, you're doing twice what I would pay for the service charge.
Exactly. And remember that this is money that is sitting on your wallet and it's not necessarily engaged in any productive venture or activity, right? So it's more or less tantamount to a tax grab. And some had even argued, well, if you want to put a levy, then do it how you're doing like the communication service, charge. Put it on the VAT component as part of the service transfer fees, not as a separate, line item. But it is high time for us to actually review the e-levy. I think in the November full year budget, probably there might be some announcement around a possible reduction or review, because clearly what we're seeing now indicates that the numbers and the revenue flows that we were expecting haven't been met. And it comes down to the lack of consultation and the poor design of the tax.
In some 40 seconds, your wrap-up comments on the entire conversation.
Look, we're in very extraordinarily challenging times, and the actions of government would go a long way to signal to what extent they are on board with the feelings and the aspirations of Ghanaians. Looking through the statement that the finance minister read yesterday, I didn't get the impression that we're a country that is in extraordinarily difficult times, or even an acknowledgement of the fact that some of our own actions is what has led us to where we are now, and not just purely because of some external, shocks in that regard. I think we need more candor in our public conversation. I think we need to engage other stakeholders on the table, or bring them around the table to solicit for alternative views in terms of how we collectively develop and run this country going forward. Because clearly, some of the interventions that have been made are not working. And the fact that they're not working tells me that we have not consulted as much as we should. Because if we did, then we wouldn't be seeing the outcomes that we're seeing now.
Doc, thank you so much for joining the conversation. We're very grateful that you took the time to join us. We've been joined on this conversation by Professor Lord Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School, and of course, Dr. Theo Achampong, an economic risk analyst. Did I get that right?
Yes, economist and political risk analyst.
Economist and political risk analyst. Yes. They joined us for the conversation. But we're asking you, don't you forget, government has hinted at bringing road tolls back for roads to be constructed. What is your take on that? What is your take on the e-levy? Should it be scrapped? Should it be reduced in terms of the percentage? And again, has the budget, as delivered by Ken Oforiatta yesterday, the mid-year budget review, has it given you any glimmer of hope? What are your thoughts? Stay with us. We'll be back on the AM show.
Hello there. Thank you so much for staying on the AM show. It's now time to discuss something interesting. I know we've done all the hard news and all that. Let's breathe a bit. Yeah. So this year we are relaunching, if I may say, the pop chain all-star concert. You know, for about 2 years we've not had it because of COVID, but thankfully we are back again, and it promises to be more exciting than ever. I've got two wonderful people here to help me have that conversation. Our very own Paul Ankra, who is Bile, if you don't know. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Bernice.
And we've got Theresa. She's with Rotary Club. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you. So let's just kickstart our conversation, okay? For those who don't know, we've been doing this since 2015.
That's
exactly.
Correct.
And together with Rotary Club and others.
And plus 223 Jazz Bar and Grill.
And Joy FM.
And a number of other partners.
And a number of other partners. We've been collaborating to help make our society better. So previously we were supporting the Joy FM Sugar Project, which was focusing on diabetes and how to create awareness and help people get through the disease. This time, Bile, we are focusing on breast cancer. Tell us more.
Well, for the past 5 years, 2015 to 2019, we actually held 5 concerts on the Diabetes Awareness Project, the Joy FM Sugar Project. And over that time, we were able to raise 80,000 Ghana cedis for breast awareness, for diabetes awareness and screening. We went to 3 regions, Volta region, Central region, and the Eastern region. And we did an outreach program, helped people understand their sugar levels. We issued out glucometers So we've done that for 5 years in support of the Joy FM Sugar project. And after that period, we took time to see what else could we do in the field of supporting health awareness. And breast cancer is an issue that is very prevalent in our society. Some are not aware that it exists, and therefore we decided that that's an area that we need to focus on. And so for the next 5 years from now to 2026, the Rotary Club of Accra Airport chapter, together with Plus 233 Jazz Bar and Grill, Joy FM, and the Millennium Project, are focusing on breast cancer awareness in the country. So that's what we're going to be focusing on.
So for those of you who are wondering, so what nature does this concert take? We're just showing a few videos of past events. So it's exciting. It's time to have fun, to dance and get excited. Let me put you on the spot, Theresa. So this, I've realized, usually focuses on the older generation. Yeah, is there a way you're trying to bridge the gap to bring young people like myself?
The last time there were a younger, band.
Okay.
Yes.
From the Martin Luther King School.
Yes, but I'm saying the kind of music you do, like, you know, some of us, we are lost, you know, but we want to be part of it.
Yeah, but that's what you call music. You should come and appreciate it. No, I mean, part of, when we started the concerts, way back in 2015, 2016, it was the school bands, because back in the day in the 60s and 70s, most secondary schools had their own school bands. So we had a lot of the old guys come back, reform, and then come and play. Now, we recognized that the younger generation needed to be brought up to speed with regards to what pop chain was all about. And back in the day, it was a very big thing in the 70s and 80s. So last year, no, the last pop chain we had, which was 2019, I beg your pardon, there was a school called Martin Luther King. The youngest person in there was, I think, 12 or 13, and the oldest was, I think, 15.
Wow.
And they blew everybody away. It was unbelievable. And it just made us realize that if we can bring the younger generation into the world of good music, and also to appreciate what musicianship is all about, this country is so talented. So we are doing the same thing again in the forthcoming concert, which is going to be launched on, we're actually going to have the concert on the 29th of October at Plus 233 Jazz Bar and Grill. And Martin Luther King are hopefully going to be joining us with a number of others.
Okay.
We will reveal the full lineup of artists very, very soon.
Okay.
But it's going to be exciting. And the whole idea is to be able to relive the great music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as well as trying to raise funds in the process to try and support breast cancer awareness and screening.
All right, so back to you, Theresa. Why is this so important for you as Rotary Club to join Joy FM and Plus 233 Jazz Bar and Grill so that we can create awareness on breast cancer?
Yeah. So Rotary International stands for humanitarian service. And so Rotary does everything which is about humanitarian service. And you know that humanitarian service is pretty much one person can't do it. We've been doing this for over 100 years and we are still doing it. And every time new things are coming up, we can't finish. And so the power of collaboration is critical. Joy FM can't do it alone. Rotary can't do it alone. And the pop chain idea was a leadership project by one of our members in our club, Rotary Club of Accra Airport, to raise funds. But Joy FM has the strength and the muscle to reach out to so many people and to attract. So Rotary stands for humanitarian service, but we do this within very ethical principles, leadership, friendship, standing on our core values. And once people know that Rotary is attached to this, I believe that we're able to raise more funds because Rotarians can get more mileage from the CDs, the one CD that you bring. Rotarians will use it to make sure that everything goes into the project.
Okay.
And so Rotary, once it's humanitarian services, we are there.
So what nature will the sponsorship take Because I know that you're going to try to reach, like you did with diabetes, reach
that's
communities, create awareness. But what else are you going to be doing?
Awareness creation is critical in this. Testing.
Okay.
We're going to bring the message way down to villages. Some people don't even know what breast cancer is. And so once you go there, they are not ever going to go to the hospitals to check. So if we take it to them, to the communities, we're able to reach and access so many people there. So once we know, and they know, they are aware of their status, then we can scale it up and bring them to seek treatments for those who need the treatment, especially early treatment. So
if I can just buttress on what Teresa has said, when we did the outreach program for diabetes in the Yamoransa area, I think it was 2017 or 2018, there was a lady who was she must have been 55, 60. And when we checked her blood pressure, it was 220 over 120. She should have been dead.
Wow.
And she did not know.
I have a picture with her.
Immediately, she was sent to hospital for treatment. So it's very important we create the awareness, because some people are not even aware. And when it comes to breast cancer, the general view is that it happens to women. Wrong. Men can also get it. So we are trying to create this awareness and this outreach, as Teresa said, by going out to the various regions, selected various regions, and to create the awareness and see how best we can help people, first of all, adopt the early approach to identifying the potential risks with breast cancer, so that there can be early interventions. Because with cancer, the earlier you catch it, the better it is.
I'm so excited about this woman. That was such a timely intervention. I'm just imagining if you had even delayed, say, for about an hour, what it could have led to.
She could have died at any time.
Could have just fallen down.
She didn't even know.
Yes.
That's right. And that's why we are so appreciative of the support we get from our sponsors. I mean, the last project we did, which was the diabetes project, companies such as GKV Investments, Casapreco Beverages, Cresage Carpets, Century Royal Hotel Resort,
Our Coconut,
Live Forms, David Walter, Goyle, Brussels Airline, Trinity Oil, and some past Rotarians such as Rotarian Rowe, CC Bruce, Rotarian Esme. They have all been instrumental in making it a success. And as we go forward with this initiative on breast cancer, we encourage all companies who are keen to support this project to create the necessary awareness that's needed to come on board and help us to achieve our goals. So we're looking forward to it. It should be very exciting. In the spirit of having fun at the pop chain, we're going to have fun, but we're also going to raise funds to create that awareness, especially in the less privileged areas where they are sometimes ignorant or don't even have the resources to be able to identify or go to hospital to identify what's wrong with them.
So, yes, please do.
The value of the partnership with Millennium Promise.
Okay.
Millennium Promise is in the communities.
Yeah.
And they will do the community mobilization before we even get there, so that people are aware, and they continue. They also support us with data. Data, which is very, very important to make sure that the people, we've supported so many cases, and these are the people who have been referred for deeper and more healthcare support. And that is very important, because it is from these data analytics that people are encouraged to give more.
Accountability is important.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned companies, but what about individuals? There's somebody sitting at home thinking, this is a good initiative. I want to be part, my widow's mite. How do I contribute?
We're going to be launching a Momo number, which should be coming out in the next week or two. And we will obviously put that on all our communication platforms, which will enable individuals and corporates or whoever to be able to contribute their little resources to help us achieve these goals. So in due course, when we have those numbers, by all means, we will come back to you again to discuss the next steps.
So how do we, for those who may not, catch that interview later, you mentioned your socials. Do you mind referring us? Are you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
Yes, we have a Facebook page which we set up last year. It's been set up so that we can be more engaging on it. We're also going to interact with the Joy FM team naturally, to see how best we can get the message across and make it easy for people to donate. But with the world of technology we live in now, these more platforms seem to be the most desired way for people to contribute. So like I said earlier on, we will come back to you with some more information because we are building this up to the event in October. So there are going to be a series of interviews and discussions. The artists who are going to perform will be coming into the studios to tell you more about what they're going to do. It should be fun, and I hope to see you there.
Oh,
you should come.
I should come.
You should do.
I'm sure it will help because sometimes I listen to the music, it's good, but the way you groove to it, as a group, you're so used to the music, you're so used to it, and so I feel
come
that.
On, Bernice, we'll teach you.
There are some people your age who enjoy music.
No, I'm saying I can appreciate really the music. But I mean, for example, a sing-along, and I like that nature about the pop chain concert because it's almost like everybody just jams onto it and we're moving. Sometimes you create this chain effect and you're dancing together. That's what makes it exciting. But I will be there this year, God willing.
Good.
Let's get on to Zoom and speak to Dr. Hagan. He is chairman of the planning committee. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. So Billy has just shared with us the main event will be happening in October, but just run us through what exactly will be happening till the climax.
Billy and Teresa have already shared with you. The pop chain is happening on the 29th of October. That's the charity concert at Plus 233 Jazz Bar. During the whole of October, there'll be a lot of appearances by members of the planning committee, our partners, Joy FM, together with Rotary Club of Accra Airport, and also Millennium Promise Alliance, and several other partners will be on interviews on radio and television to mount up the awareness on breast cancer and the screening, as well as the awareness campaigns that we're going to do to whip up people who have been supporting us to donate so that we can go to the community outreach programs and do the screening at the doorstep of people in the community. So this is the plan. So October is going to be really action-packed, and then we climax it with a concert on 29th of October. Thereafter, then there'll be the two major community outreach programs in November and followed with another one in March. So this is the plan we have in place.
And I must mention that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's when we all go pink to create awareness on breast cancer. So that's a good choice there. But Doc, tell us more about the concert. Is it a ticketed event?
It is a ticketed event. So we will sell tickets a few weeks ahead of time. And if more tickets are available, we'll sell at the gates. But when we announce it, we will advise as many of our patrons to buy their tickets in advance.
Definitely, because it's been a long break, and I'm sure there are people who are just yearning to have a feel of the Pop Chain All-Star concert again. Doc, I'll come back to you shortly, but let me find out from you. There are so many projects you could have decided to get on board with. I mean, there's so many things that need intervention in this country. I mean, but obviously you couldn't do it all at the same time, so you need to make a choice. What went into settling on breast cancer?
Well, I think there was a discussion had amongst the planning committee during the COVID time. We had a series of meetings, and to decide as to what the next project was going to be. And in terms of the national need, I think it was clearly identified that cancer was one of the big areas that needed addressing. And following the discussion with the team, it was agreed that we should focus on breast cancer. There's so many people who suffer it. Some are not even aware of it, and like I said earlier on, if you don't catch it early, it can be a bit of a challenge to get it under control. So that was the ethos behind it. We have so many friends who have lost partners to breast cancer, and we just felt that it needed some support to make people aware of the risks of cancer and the importance of early identification or detection, so that the medical team and doctors can give you the necessary support to be able to get it under control, or better still, get rid of it.
I'm really excited about this because over the years, we focus a lot on certain diseases. So, for example, in Ghana, you talk about the malarias and all that. But unfortunately, it's turning out that cancer kills more people than malaria. When, a doctor friend told me that, I was shocked. I'm like, you're joking, is that bad? So just think about it, the number of people who may have a certain cancer in their bodies that they don't even know as we sit here and talk. So this is a very worthy initiative. And I'm also excited about the education bit because there's so many myths about breast cancer, so many of them. And we've had the opportunity to share stories of people who were told, go to a spiritual center, it got worse, and now they run into the hospital and it's trouble, you cannot be saved. So I must applaud the planning committee for making this choice. So Doc, let me come to you to take your final words. I'll give you the opportunity to convince people why in these rather difficult economic times, it is worthy, it is a good cause to, part ways with something little for this project.
Thank you for the opportunity. Just as we found out with the diabetes awareness and screening, there are a lot of our mothers, aunties, daughters walking around and they are not aware at all that they have the risk of breast cancer. In some other cases, even when they know, the wherewithal to get the necessary attention is a challenge. So our effort is to bring awareness of breast cancer and what interventions are available, as well as medical attention to the doorstep of the people who matter. That is the people in the communities. And that is why we ask all our patrons, traditional patrons and new ones, to donate generously to this effort so that breast cancer will cease to be a menace because awareness will have been made. And let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the support that we've been getting previously. These are our traditional sponsors for the diabetes effort. We are expecting that they will continue to support us, and other donors will also come on board. That's GKD Investments, the makers of Eva Virgin Coconut Oil, Pasapreco Beverages, Research Carpets, St. Royal Resort, Life Forms Limited, David Water Limited, Goil Limited, Brussels Airline, Trinity Oil, very supportive individuals, Rotarian Roe, and also Rotarian C.T. Bruce, as well as Rotarian Esme Thompson. We thank you all very much, and we hope you're coming on board again with us this year. And then finally, we have a Momo account, which we'll share with our patrons as quickly as we can, as well as our Facebook page, so that donations can start almost immediately and climax it in October. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ben Hagan is chairman of the planning committee for the Pop Chain All-Star concert. I'll be wrapping up with my guests here. Our very own Bile Polankra, sitting to my immediate left, and father is Theresa Osei-Tutu. She's a past assistant governor of the Rotary Club Airport. So we're wrapping up the conversation. Doc has told us why people should be a part of it. Let me just give you the opportunity to share your final words.
Well, the whole initiative of the Joy FM Planning Committee, in partnership with the Accra Airport chapter of the Rotary Club and Plus 233 Jazz Bar and Grill, is to be able to put together a pop chain event that actually raises funds for a number of health related initiatives. And as the last 5 events have been so successful, and with the two-year break we've had because of COVID, I am certain that a lot of our patrons are eager to see what this one's going to bring. I'm not going to reveal everything that's going to happen, but it's going to be special.
I wanted you to just give us a teaser of something different, something exciting.
Nice try, Bernice. I know where you're going.
Can you drop a name of at least one artist?
Well, okay, let's put it this way. The band that won the competition last year, Martin Luther King, are going to be with us this year. Okay. And they promised something even more special than what they did.
Great.
And there's more to follow on that, but we are finalizing a few details. Okay, once we are ready, we will come back to you and let the whole world know what's happening. But it's going to be exciting. Get ready for the 29th of October for the emergence of the phase 2 of our Pop Chain project.
I like that. Ma'am, your final words.
Well, I think this is an opportunity, and as Rotary does, to do good in the world. So whatever it is that your aim is in this life, you need to give something back. You need to do good in the world, put something aside, come have fun, but also to do good in the world. Thanks.
I like that. Do good, please. Do some good. We'll be announcing the Momo numbers when we finalize everything. We'll let you know. Something very little. It could be 10 CDs, it could be 20 CDs, but it goes a long way when we pool our resources together to make a difference in people's lives. Just remember that story Bila shared with us of that woman. Imagine if they hadn't got there when they got there. It could have been a child losing their mother, a husband losing his wife. And it's not a pleasant thing at all, especially when it happens so suddenly and in a way that you aren't prepared for. So please be part of this. We're calling all of you to be a part of it. Support us to make the difference in the lives of people. And for those of you watching, remember Bila said something? Breast cancer is not exclusive to women. I have an uncle who suffered from breast cancer. Yep. Thankfully, he survived it because it was caught early. So do join us, everybody, regardless of your gender. You should be interested in this particular initiative. Let me say thank you once again to Theresa Osei. She's the past Assistant Governor of Rotary Club Airport, and Belay, our very own Belay. I just love his name when I mentioned Belay. Well, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. But thank you. Our pleasure. Thank you for joining us to have this conversation, and don't forget to keep this locked. October 29th, we'll be having the Joy FM Pop Chain All-Star Concert. But when we come back, Benjamin and I will be engaging you on what we've been discussing in today's show, the big stories, focusing on the mid-year budget review. Were your expectations met? Do share with us when we come back shortly. Thank you so much for staying on the AM show. Benjamin is back, and when you see us this way, you know what it means. It's now time to hear what you have to say about the big issues we've been discussing. And today it's been largely on the mid-year budget review.
Yeah.
So
money matters. Reminds me of that song. Is it about money? Must be sunny. You should know, rich man.
Would you perform in the Pop Chain All-Star Concert? I should call Belay and tell him to write the stage. So yesterday we heard from some of you on what your expectations were. It would be good to hear you again. Were those expectations met? Are you okay, satisfied with the presentation by the Finance Minister? We've also put a question on our Facebook page about this interesting one, Benjamin. Very interesting, if you ask me. Interesting because of the back and forth, especially with how we decided all of a sudden to stop taking tools. So there was an announcement, and then before we could say Jack, it was being implemented. And the Speaker of Parliament said, no, this is not how to do it. We have to approve it. And, well, government still insisted, and it never came back. So you drive through many of the major roads today where tolls were usually taken in. It's free flow of traffic for a lot of people. But The excitement has been cut short, hasn't it?
The goodie. You know, I foresaw this. I've been going through a specific stretch, right?
Okay.
And it's cool because now I just do my hand, but now I check like.
Yeah.
I don't think those ones will be affected because it's now the new road developments, like the motorway extension that are going to.
And at this point, considering what we've seen over time, I'll just ask you to just hold on. Don't be too excited because
I should enjoy it for now.
Who knows? There may be some re-asphalting of that road which will fall under a private part. And before you realize there's a toll booth situated there.
They could do some work on all of these former roads that way, and all of a sudden we're back to.
I'm sorry. It's just what we've seen over time, and it's what has allowed me. I mean, yesterday I said, Finance Minister was supposed to come at 10 a.m. I said, look, I mean, anything could happen. And it was postponed to 1. I was home watching you. Yeah.
he came close to 2 p.m.
That's what I'm saying. I was home watching you as you hosted your guests. And so just let us know. The number to call 030-221-691 extension to share your thoughts with us. While we wait for your calls to come through, though, let's get your comments on whether the e-levy should be scrapped, considering the decision to bring back the tolls on certain roads funded through private-public partnership. So Elliot says, I'm sorry to say this government does not take people's opinions for anything, so any opinion expressed here would not yield any results.
Oh,
it's
wow.
sad.
What a way to start off the conversation.
It's sad that Elliot feels this way, but I'm sure it's related to the e-levy because there was such a pushback.
Right. Do you know how... Whenever we look at these, I also look at the number of likes there. Look at the number of people who are agreeing with his sentiment.
21 people. 21 people. And that's representative of the larger number if you look at it in terms of statistics and where you don't have the whole set represented. You can look at the subset and make projections and inferences. Right. But let's go to Hope. He says, it doesn't matter to me anymore whether or not e-levy is scrapped. The tolls should be collected right away, especially at the locations of our bridges, so they may be used for bridge upkeep before something disastrous happens. So another question, did the government consider all this? So when we decided that we're not going to take the tolls, did we think about how else we could be bringing in the revenue and sorting out? Like Dr. Theo Champion said, if only the tolls will be used for what they are meant to be used for. Remember some years ago we were told that there was sometimes where the road fund, I've forgotten the exact name for it, but there were sometimes monies were taken out of the use for other
projects. Yes.
So, yeah, we need to do the right thing. Joshua Luis says, this government acts and implements unnecessary policies swiftly before planning. They think Ghanaians are, okay, this is quite a harsh word, the fools and shallow-minded people. E-levy has become a burden because it's not raking in the expected revenue. If they are bringing back the toll booths, then the e-levy should be cancelled. Okay. We heard from government when it went to the IMF. Because once again, we were told, well, we need a lot of revenue, so e-levy is the way to go. Then later we were told that e-levy is not bringing in as much as we want. So we need to go to the IMF. And there were those who suggested, don't scrap the e-levy. Government says, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to the IMF for a particular reason. What I'm accruing from the e-levy will help me deal with the other economic problems. I feel like a lot of Ghanaians feel swindled. So once again, you've got the toll booth.
Because I agree, it was e-levy or the IMF, but some said both, though, to be fair. Some had said, let's do both. And so maybe that's the option they are running by.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
or running
and the other question, Benjamin, for me is, you were discussing with your guests what was missing from the budget review yesterday. One of them had to do with how much we had been able to save as a result of expenditure cut. And the other was how much we've accrued from the e-levy. And the Act mentions that the GRA will have to furnish the minister with the details after every quarter. And he would present in a mid-year budget review how much we've made. Technically, we've not implemented the e-levy. August 1st.
So 1st of May, June.
We are in July.
May, June, July.
We are in July.
3 months have passed.
So well, someone will say, well, we enter August before the 3 months pass. But once again, you ask yourself, we know what we were making because why then we go to the IMF? So there are figures there. And I am thinking that due to the controversy around the whole e-levy, the finance minister could have decided to tell us, to settle the doubt.
I totally agree with you. Being above the board, being very willing to give out information is crucial when it comes to any rhetoric about the e-levy. But, well, it is what it is.
Well, so our colleague Michael is in town finding out from some of you what you make of the media budget review. Let's cross over to him. Hello, Michael. Tell us what you've been able to gather. Hello, Michael. Michael, can you hear me? Too bad. Well, hopefully Michael will be able to hear me. But there are a few more comments, Benjamin, on our Facebook page. All right. Hello, Michael. If you can hear me, tell us what you've been able to gather from those you've been speaking to.
I can hear you. Yes, so, great. Bernice, so I'm here at the Neoplan station in Circle, interacting with the drivers, specifically those that use the Accra-Tema motorway here. I have quite a number of them who are ready to share with me their thoughts here. So I'll speak to some of them. So you're motorway also. Okay, driver. Okay. In draft finance minister no, or say new concession no be no kwan so no. Almost say kwan na obedi toll no back e kwan so then no adwen twere wo ho.
Let me say adwen there say ye kwan no there because so far no traffic is wo ho anajo enwumre anopa ana ha adwen e ma hours no you waste hours no working hours you wasting for nothing. Besides that, you know, so see obeji road fund and a toll now. Me feel say a better double taxation because already you know fuel no ye tia road fund room. So what other toll again? And now obe scrap it, sad fuel tax in everyone. Sana wabeji toll na I said yen. And no cry you know but you feel say from Pokwasi to Nsawam no, and we hear more than the obeyers if anything government should expedite action. So that road is constructed as quickly as possible. What I say, because you're shocked to say you're spending so many hours just that short distance to be full say government is on the right track. But told in there, as also a review not and just a better double taxation. Let
me thank you very much. So let me speak to some more drivers. Now, essentially what he's been saying is that he sees us as double taxation. At the part where he speaks the English, that double taxation that as part of the fuel component, he feels that they are already paying for the construction of roads, and it shouldn't be that probably it should be a review. Saying of the double taxation of what he described. Let me talk to some more drivers. Bossman, who you sue motorway, right? You. How are you taking the news that we are going to be? Okay, so often the finance minister says this year the expanding kwan be 10 lanes. Now you sanso the toll about to kwan no be. Then you are doing trouble.
Now don't you know say. So why in the 10 lane na eye na mum yam penfo na wo motisu no wo moye wo ba won yefunu ane won abusu ankwan na wo da wonim na ebe ma me ana wo ubenya so mfa so no won ye no sabe to ya wo ye wo ya me jere say tama ye 2 lane no ayi ka ba ko sesi ba ko anaka ba ko ntema traffic ye den eba nti se wo ye half 5 na yetana ebebu aye eba ye nyina ye ho ba ha ye na mum wonuro ma no ense ye to aba ana wo foso ya na ye wodada na ye koto aba no wa woni won abusu afon kuan na be den ebedi ni ye na ye aka no ye ho kiri ye sebe o ma kwan wo ya ebeka wo ye nyina ebe foso bi enti ye nyina ye ho ba den ye ho ba
enti ebetu ato no
wo famra bi we sebe to na na ye di sese ya kwan nti se wo ye to no na wo so se won tua bi wa ebebu aye nti won famra bi o kakra
ebi mo susuro se yetumi yakwan na se to ni babaka mo de beka mo lorry fe
oh so to ni de fidi da no de e kan wo de da so what I say so why wo wie kwan no so be to na ni nyina kan wo de da nti ane de so ka so be sura o ye da kwan no ba fa so on fa so na ba fa won to betu ya
let me ask some more drivers. So essentially, he says that it was a good idea, laudable one. I mean, he really does not understand why the previous collection of the toll on the Accra-Tema motorway was scrapped for this one to just be introduced. But it's a laudable idea that the drivers are hoping, looking forward to, especially because it's going to inure to the work that they do with the rehabilitated Accra-Tema motorway. Let me speak to some more drivers. I mean, what's your idea about the Accra-Tema motorway being retold when it's rehabilitated?
So a lot of will be the problem. I'm saying Ghana Hangasano, the problem back here a lot of coin. We shank Kwaya on penny 40 year. Baby Oma Yeni. Shall come to say motorway. Ya check. A crime baby Rambo Eddie can't say motorway that's what the whole. It's the make a crab catch penny 40 say. I was a quino, almost ya, almost ye, so we the year. Now we kwan cha enya dia kwan bi adi be 5 years na atutu na fe years oban ni san ko pesika foforo e san dia ba ye kwan eti de mekan say so ye kwan ni yie na say yan driver for ni na kwan no so na say kwan ni ye papa na o si ye ntua ye di problem but wo ye kwan no na wa anya ni yie na mo ye kwan no be ye 1 month e be 5 years na kwan na tutu na ye san baji sika foforo aya na nya yan ko school ya ye ho ye tuas kanuma aban no. Yes, I know about school for no musician.
So essentially, he's also, I mean, saying that the coming of the toll again on the rehabilitated Accra-Tema motorway is a laudable idea. They are only hoping that this will be of top quality and that the road won't be deteriorating in just in a number of years. Let me speak to this gentleman here. So, toll, are you going to pay the toll if he comes back?
Yes. The woman said, Abano, yes, yan driver for yes, Reno, and I'm more money to know, and I'm on reading. As I said, Tama Obabe Jaitonu, on Gigito Biono, one carry and saying, on one ordinary pay, and I see me Gito Bio. I heard a fire driver phone. One says, Saba say, Obesoya Quine, and Sana Oyeden, or Tajito Biono. I want to do a seminar. I ain't Yasimiaka. Do you know I be buano? I'm minor obuno, or better a mano. I'm a young at Timamufono, Yahumbetorno, and also ye. Said the Omuyano, Omu from. What say, Omu from, and Omu, and Omuma, and Omubusa from Quanomu. Yatimam for a tuabano, Yakoja Yaso, a tuabano Mude, Omu fire Yare, Omu carpet, and Omudu and Nato. Omudi and carpet and Omunamto. They said, dear Conde, and we had the man, and a petrol, some petrol, baby, I could share diesel, petrol, baby, I could do my yeah, bread. Kakra ya for Benyano, I thought before. Now you are not tired, coffee, you sign the coffee. I shall say, enquire my, and this obey a quine, so Begito, and then I can't ask them. What the fire for you say, never any business fan and a devil corner on being. Yeah, for them fire. There me chefan there. No, see, obey a toe now, obey Jito, on Jito, obey a call. Yeah, and I'm so, and never ya car say, yeah, and Yamasa can I say, your crop was so kind, and yes, Kakitwa. So, a quania, say a quanamamo. I say a muchato.
Great. So it sounds as if that at the new plant station here, specifically those drivers who ply the Accra-Tema motorway are in support of a rehabilitated road for which they are willing to pay. So finally, let me ask you before I speak to some passengers who are also in a Tema-bound vehicle. What do you think of the idea of retolling the Accra-Tema motorway?
Memetiano, Meme that's all near Suton with your floor. But Metis said what the question for my Yetianka. Me a driver Nipio, no Kotofu at Asumitia, and to me beside Banner said. So I said the tone back Bioma or bet tear free. Fu and Lumana, and I said, bet your fool and we are said Tiato Nankasa. On a maybe Sano. Now a Quanosu de Wayama and Kababua. Now I did say, oh, that's all right, that's your two fool. Yes, where that's where you turn if you want. Yes, some of the best fool. It's a banner that may say, be son of Biose. Say turn what the bow be yefi fu na what the shame no be yefi man na so yin film. So be yefim dia aba boy nyina.
But I say pa. So is sharing the same sentiment. Let me speak finally to some passengers who are en route to Tema, on what they also think of the reintroduction of tolls on the rehabilitated Akakpo motorway. Daddy, good morning. What do you feel about retolling of the Akakpo motorway? Some of your people have spoken to tell me they are afraid that they will have to.
Michael, that will bring you more in subsequent bulletins, especially what passengers feel. We've been hearing a lot more from the drivers, but we'd also like to hear from some of you. But before we go, just so you know, JoyNews in partnership with EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, and the Planned City Extension Project from Cities and Habitats will make home ownership easy. This year's fair is under the theme, Home Ownership Where You Live Matters. At the EcoBank JoyNews Habitat Fair, we got you covered with all your needs from mortgages, personal loans, consumer financing, land acquisition, security, and many more. For enquiries, please call us on 054-690-8179 or 054-011-0389. The EcoBank JoyNews Habitat Fair is in partnership with EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, and powered by the Planned City Extension Project from Cities and Habitats, Rent to Own. It's sponsored by Elegant Homes and General Construction Limited, where quality meets value. Virtual Security Africa, Complete Security Solutions, Superlock Technologies Limited. You deserve the best. DBS Industries Limited, we truly are your roof experts. Duraplast Limited, where Duraplast goes, water flows. And Gold Key Properties, building prestige since 1997. EcoBank JoyNews Habitat Fair, where you live matters.
Well, let's talk about the abuse of the World Vision logo and images. And the attention of World Vision has been drawn to a live television broadcast by a group of people operating under the names World Vision Fan Club and World Vision Foundation on Energy TV and ABTV satellite television stations since June the 28th, 2022. A review of the video recordings of the programs indicates that these groups are using the logo and some images of World Vision with a view to getting interested people to register with various amounts of money in return for corresponding financial support. World Vision is concerned that its logo and images are being used by the so-called World Vision Fan Club and World Vision Foundation to collect money from the unsuspecting public. World Vision therefore dissociates itself from the so-called World Vision Fan Club and World Vision Foundation and their operations and wishes to caution the general public as such. We call on the members of the World Vision Fan Club and World Vision Foundation to desist from using the logo, images, and any other material for their activities forthwith. World Vision is a Christian relief development and advocacy organization dedicated to working with children, families, and communities to overcome poverty and injustice. World Vision has been working in all regions of Ghana for the past 42 years. For more information on World Vision Ghana, visit their website and you can get all the details you need.
Hello Ghana, happy moment is here. Let's storm World Cup Qatar 2022 with Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks and Awake Drinking Water from Casapreco Company Limited. Simply buy your favorite Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks and Awake Drinking Water and text the 4-digit unique number on the neck of the bottle to short code *780# option 2. *780# option 2 and follow the prompt on all networks for free. Be one of the lucky winners to this year's World Cup in the monthly draw. You can also win TVs, fridges, microwave ovens, mobile phones, home theaters, free drinks and more instantly. Don't waste time. Grab a bottle of Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks and Awake Drinking Water and let's storm Qatar this World Cup. This promotion is on the NLA Caritas platform and this advert is FDA approved. Remember, terms and conditions apply. Now, a person who is not required to register for VAT may voluntarily apply to be registered. A voluntary applicant shall be registered as a taxable person where the Commissioner General is satisfied that the person has a fixed place of abode or business or reasonably believes that the person keeps proper accounting records related to any business activity carried on by that person, the person submits regular and reliable tax returns or reasonably believes that the person is fit and proper to be registered. And that's how you can benefit from that. And on that note, Benjamin?
On that note, well, we get ready to wrap the conversation.
Yes.
It's been quite a day, hasn't it? Here we are actually ending the conversation, but it's been quite a conversation.
It's been very exciting, and unfortunately, at the time we announced the phone lines, we weren't getting any calls, so we had to cross over to Michael. Yeah. But we'll do so again, God willing, tomorrow, where we get very interactive with you, and we respect that you're glued to your sets every morning when Benjamin and I come with the AM show. So right now, we would have to make way for News Desk, and we will continue that conversation. There will be more on the mid-year budget review. That one has a lot of angles to it that you can't exhaust on one show. So do stay with us here on the JoyNews channel. You know we are home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. But for now, from Benjamin and Bernice, enjoy the rest of your day. Catch you same time tomorrow, 6 a.m. Take care.